Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Suhail Zaidi. I'm from CII. On behalf of CII digital team and the Center for Digital Transformation, welcome you all to this very interesting and the relevant topic for the day on cybersecurity. We all are aware that COVID has changed the work environment and has introduced new things like work from home, which has shifted the defense parameter for the cyber world. And I'm sure today's discussions will highlight most of the important things and make us understand what are the best practices and how should we go ahead and introduce us to the new concepts which are there. So before without taking more of your time, I'll take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Amit Sinha Roy, who is the Governing Council member for Center for Digital Transformation. And he is also the Vice President and the Global Head of Marketing and Communications at Tata Communications Limited. Amit defines differentiated winning global marketing strategies, propositions, and programs for Tata Communications enterprise service providers and medias and entertainment businesses across India, APAC, MECA, Europe, North America, almost the entire world, by focusing on segmentations, targeting and propositioning for the key solutions and platforms through direct and partner routes to markets that is then transformed into actions through accounts-based everything approach with a view to empowering each sales account manager effectively engage their customers with bespoke solutions propositions. Amit Sinha Roy has been playing a very important role in Center for Digital Transformation, which is supported by Tata Communications and Dell Technologies. I now hand over to Mr. Amit Sinha Roy to initiate this session, please. Over to you, Mr. Roy.
Thank you, Colonel Sari. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, please, you are audible.
Good morning. A very warm welcome to all of you on behalf of CII, Tata Communications Center for Digital Transformation, and of course on my personal behalf. And it gives me immense pleasure to welcome each one of you to the conference on DX Secure, creating a cybersecurity strategy for your company in the current scenario. Digital transformation is the most discussed topic worldwide since it represents the heightened adoption of IT to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of business, government, governance, every transaction that we can think of, while reducing overall costs. While increasing advancements in digital technologies have fundamentally transformed our lives, the proliferation of mobile and IoT devices, rising threat levels associated with that, and of course the low awareness amongst users is rapidly increasing the cyber vulnerabilities and the associated risks. The cybersecurity landscape is one that has been constantly evolving over the past couple of years, of course playing catch up with many of the areas that hackers are now opening. And data has become synonymous with currency. And the digital economy is expected to contribute 20% to the Indian economy by 2025. So the increased use of cyberspace for our daily transactions has raised the stakes for cyber attacks. The challenges due to COVID have witnessed a greater use of digital technologies and the remote working scenario that currently is sufficient, along with the distributed architecture that has further increased the vulnerability because there's so many more inputs that are now available for hackers, leading to several fold increase in cyber attacks. So the average mobile and data user in India consumes 50 to 20 gigabytes of data per year. E-commerce as an industry is expected to grow to 25 billion by 2020. Digital payments in India are growing at 13% CAGR, while the mobile wallets domain will soon experience growth of up to 50% CAGR. With greater inclusion of services such as AI, machine learning, data analytics, cloud computing, IoT, across all industry and functional domains, the scope of cybersecurity has become vast and is challenging and necessary a function that all organizations and enterprises must have. At the Center for Digital Transformation, we realize that digital transformation journey of organizations will need to have the required cybersecurity infrastructure to safeguard their businesses and the progress they make due to digital transformation. Today, we have very eminent speakers for this opening session of our conference, which will be followed by sessions on network security, unified threat management, and cloud security, which will also witness several experts from the cybersecurity arena for each of those sessions. I'm sure the learnings derived through the deliberations today would be of immense value to the industry, to the attendees. Without further ado, let me now invite Ms. Vaishali Bhavla, Advocate Civil and Cybersecurity, to address the delegates. Before I invite her, let me share that Vaishali is a practicing lawyer with 22 years of experience in litigation and advisory practice in Pune and Mumbai. He specializes in cyber law and privacy law and also handles general commercial and civil cases. She has represented clients in courts in several high-profile cases of cyber frauds, data theft, hacking, cyber defamation, insider corporate fraud, online harassment against women and children in several areas. She is a member of the expert panel formed by CII Delhi for digital transformation, the expert committee of the Maharashtra Commission for Women on Online Harassment, the expert panel formed by Maharashtra Cyber to discuss changes required in cyber law, the Board of Studies at Symbiosis for Distance Learning, and member of the Cyber Advisory Council for Surya Datta International University of Cybersecurity. She has won several recognitions and awards for her pro bono work in spreading cybersecurity awareness and won the award by NASCOM and Data Security Council in 2017 for her work in keeping children safe online. Welcome, Vaishali. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Roy, and good morning to everyone. Respected Chair, Mr. Narendra Nathji, office bearers of the CII Communications Center for Digital Transformation, other office bearers of CII, Mr. Amir Roy, Colonel Zaidi, and my co-panelists. It is indeed an honor to be speaking in a program which has been conceptualized by CII on a very relevant topic. And I'm going to use this opportunity to highlight some of the cybersecurity breach incidents and cases that I have witnessed in the COVID pandemic times and also its aftermath. In a way, I'm going to state the problem statement to set the tone of the entire seminar so that once we frame what the problem is in front of us, it is easy to offer solutions to corporate entities so that then it becomes easy to mitigate risks by framing, say, policies, strategies, etc. Eventually, through the program, there will be experts who will be talking about the logical, say, attacks or logical targeted attacks on information systems. However, in my little speech that I have, I'm going to concentrate on the human element. And as I said, frame the problem statement because the work of a lawyer starts only after a breach incident occurs. Yes, a bit of compliance, yes, but I think most of the times we are contacted only after the breach incident occurs. And as I said, I'm going to concentrate on the human aspect of this entire syndrome. So in a way, the bad picture first. We have all seen during pandemic and even the aftermath that along with the spread of the virus, social engineering campaigns which preyed on the fear of the spread of the virus, they spread actually even as quickly as the disease itself. We saw several social engineering scams, business email communications frauds, to which employees and the public at large fell prey unknowingly when they were caught off guard. Sometimes, one wonders how people can actually succumb to such social engineering scams, but I'm going to list out a few, and I'm also going to talk about a few cases which actually highlights as to how people really are gullible and susceptible to such social engineering gimmicks. We all saw there were several emails that were circulated which masqueraded as official emails from government institutions. They had the WHO logo or the CDC logo, and then it was easy to track victims. There were several emails which also had subject lines as coronavirus, a brief note for a particular industry, say a brief note for the automotive industry, a brief note for the healthcare industry. And that was also a very targeted way of luring or enticing employees to open those emails, click on attachments, etc. Another more, I saw some emails and also came across some cases where the emails actually said updated cases of coronavirus around you. And yes, it did generate a lot of interest. Coronavirus maps, where users were being enticed to click on the maps or the links given on the maps. False medical advices, false cures for the virus, and more importantly, false charity scams and emails where people were lured into depositing money in all kinds of accounts, stating that it was charity. So what did all these emails typically do? We all know that it had a malware node at the back, an attachment where, again, employees were lured into opening those emails, opening those attachments. And once the malware was deposited on the computer system, then harvesting sensitive data, stealing personal or financial information, deploying ransomware, and eventually causing financial loss or even reputation damage became really, really very easy. During the course of my practice, actually, I have come across several disturbing cases, so to say, which purely were to social engineering attacks and the gullibility or vulnerability of people using it. However much we concentrate on spreading cybersecurity awareness, giving information about how to be secure online, the gap between information and action really is large, and it is very difficult to actually change people's behavior when they come to operating online. Very recently, a doctor couple came and visited my office. Both were medical practitioners, and the lady told me that her husband has been transferring several sums of money over a period of almost 3 years in different accounts because he was being called by different people. And when we discussed what the case was, she said that he had applied or he had got some insurance policies some years back through some insurance agents. He was unhappy with those insurance policies, and he had started communicating with IRDAI officials over emails. And while doing those communications, there were several of these agents who kept contacting him through WhatsApp messages, calls, and even emails saying that they will help him recover the money. And this went on for 3 years. This is no exaggeration. I was astonished to see the amount of money that was transferred by this very learned medical practitioner, and it was to the tune of 1.25 lakhs, thinking that he would eventually get 3 crores back from these different people who've been communicating with him. We tried to convince him to file a police complaint, where he was very reluctant, and when he said that no, he's still very hopeful that all these agents and this company who's helping him is genuine, and he's still hopeful of getting the money back, as if he was under some sort of a hypnotic behavior, which was very, very worrisome. On similar lines, I've come across several business email communication frauds where people have believed in emails sent by complete strangers and have entered into business transactions. Again, one lady and her daughter came and visited my office, and they said that she had lost her husband a few months back to a cardiac arrest. There was a partnership formed. She said she never looked into the business till her husband's death. And when she went to office, she realized that there were several cans which said bio oil with a room full of cans. And when we looked into all the email communications, we realized that he had entered into a business transaction with a completely unknown entity, thinking that since the profit margins promised were very high, thinking that he's going to make money out of it. And so many more matrimonial frauds, where women, men alike, in this desperation of finding love, are ready to transfer lakhs of rupees to complete strangers. What I'm trying to highlight is that 95%, and again, this is something that we all know of, 90% of cybersecurity breaches start with a human error. And that is something that needs to be really harnessed. Of course, there will be software and hardware which will be deployed to secure IT systems, but if the human element or the human access to these systems is not handled properly, then we really still are in real trouble. How have companies suffered because of such employee actions? And I can think of four things: loss of revenue and financial loss, especially when it comes to financial institutions. I come from Pune, and we know we have one of the largest cooperative banks in Maharashtra facing a loss worth crores of rupees because of phishing attacks and maybe negligence of the employees who are working in financial institutions. Loss of intellectual property is another another loss that can be pegged at in hierarchy at a higher level. Damage to brand reputation, yes, the corporates have a duty towards their shareholders, towards their customers, and if they suffer a breach incident, that is an obligation that they are unable to comply with. And then there is liability to third parties, and last but not the least, legal liability is something that cannot be wished away. Legal liability, which can amount to monetary damages, penalty as prescribed under the law, and in the Indian context, more particularly under the Information Technology Act. There also can be criminal liability to the board members for gross negligence and not following due diligence as that is expected under law. And then there are regulators who can impose sanctions, fines can be imposed, there could be suspension or limiting of services, and we have also seen that happening where RBI has limited services of some large financial institutions for not having an appropriate cybersecurity posture. And cancellation of license is also something that corporates need to worry about. All of these liabilities, which I just spoke of, are culled out of primarily the Information Technology Act and the rules which have been notified thereunder. And then there are special regulators which have issued guidelines which are mandatory in nature on the companies that are regulated by such regulators such as RBI, SEBI, etc. Now that we know the consequences of not having a proper security posture or a cybersecurity strategy, it will now be easy to come back to the drawing table and see, do we really want to wait for an incident to happen? Do we really want to think of cybersecurity only after a breach happens? Or is it something that needs to be thought of right at the inception, including, and I stress on this again, including the human aspect of it? Because in the pandemic times, we saw that work from home actually opened a can of worms where employees started connecting to company infrastructure through unsecured devices, though everyone thought offering a VPN solution is sort of a magical cure for all your security problems. And there will be experts will talk on this more, but obviously this was as if VPN was the only solution available for all their problems relating to security breach. I hope for today's discussion on mitigation of liability, and here is hoping all of the corporates are adequately secured from cybersecurity breaches, though I say it at the cost of my own profession. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Vaishali, and it's very, very informative and indeed an area, of course, that requires the utmost attention, as you mentioned. And I was just thinking back on so many of the spam and phishing emails that I've received and keep receiving on on a daily basis, and some of them are going to scare you. If you don't click this, your account will get closed and so on and so forth. And I was just thinking back about a large corporate, that had a phishing attack, and I think they publicly, what I read, is they lost up to $600 million in this COVID time frame. So thank you for that, Nicholas. And now, without further ado, let me invite Mr. Narendra Nath, Joint Secretary, National Security Council Secretariat, Government of India. He's an officer of the Indian Telecommunications Service, the Joint Secretary, National Security Council Secretariat, with responsibilities for coordination in matters of cybersecurity activities by different entities of India in the government, public, and private sectors. Prior to this, he was Deputy Director General, Department of Telecommunications, Government of India, with overall responsibilities for the policy formulation and implementation and matters pertaining to telecom network security. He has over 30 years of telecom experience, including 20 years of senior management experience in the areas of telecom, security, network planning, installation, operation, and maintenance. He was associated with the Telecommunications Standards Development Society of India, TSDSI, as a member of their government council. He was also director on the board of Tata Communications Limited and is currently on the board of Nixon. He has a master's in technology from IIT Delhi with specialization in VLSI design. Srinath, welcome. We're looking forward to your.
Yeah, thank you very much. And sorry for jumping the queue. Yeah, I have a meeting at 11 o'clock. That's why I requested for an early, slot for me. Yeah, I think Ms. Vishali Bhagwat has, succinctly put the problems that we have in this sector, especially regarding social engineering. And there was a lot, a lot of stress on, how the general citizen of the country is being compromised and the troubles that he is going through. And she also mentioned that we due to lack of strategy, to wait for the strategy to come and then things like that. So a couple of things I will just quickly mention. One is that yes, we are working on a national cybersecurity strategy. We have a cybersecurity policy of 2013, but then we realized that there were no clear-cut deliverables or measurable goals that were set out in that. And it's required to have a national cybersecurity strategy. And last year we started working on that. Industry-wide consultations have taken place, and consultations within the government have also taken place. Interministerial consultations have taken place, and the draft document is, ruled by the government. It is in the final stages of, at the higher levels of the government of being examined, and it's expected to come. So that takes a very holistic view of all of cybersecurity. So talk of cybersecurity, one is the cyber crime part of it, where you talked of the social engineering. Of course, social engineering also helps in compromising business accounts also and government accounts. But there's a big body of citizens who get affected. So you'll find that strategy is coming, and there are provisions in that strategy for covering all aspects from and in terms of revisiting the institutional structures and the responsibilities they have, the coordination and cooperation between the institutions, and creation of further national infrastructure for threat intelligence sharing, malware repository, and things like that, and having a national DNS also. But the thing is, before in parallel to the strategy be coming up, you'll find that there are actions that have taken place. One is, you have created the I4C, the Indian Cybercrime Coordination Center. And as recently as and that's a work that started, I would say, in some sort of an ad hoc manner. 7 verticals were visualized, and within the MHA it was created. And now to make it in a more formal structure, the cabinet has approved for a position of a Director General for the I4C. And that position is expected to shortly be filled up. And you will find that there will be a much more strengthening of the functioning of the I4C, and that should help in really addressing the cybercrime landscape of the country. You would also be aware that a portal has been created for citizens of this country to report cyber crimes, and all the state governments have also been brought onto this portal for the because it's a crime. Law and order is a state subject, and whenever it's reported, it goes to the respective state government to. So that is one infrastructure that has been created, and it is also in the process of being strengthened. Now, when you look at the whatever recently you've seen of the SolarWinds event that has happened, you'll find that nation states are well-funded or enterprise level organizations involved cybersecurity incidents with capacities and capabilities of core to nation states are very active, and they're of very big cause of concern. Because the amount of resources that they have, none of the enterprises would be able to counter those resources in individual capacity. So it's required that whole of nation approach and cooperative approach with enterprises is required to address the types of threats that come from these organizations. So that's where we require that at the national level we have visibility into the malicious traffic that is there. The National Cyber Coordination Center, NCCC, that we have got, is actually looking at the metadata of the traffic, aggregated traffic at the national level, taking traffic from the ISPs, from the state data centers, from the banks and other financial institutions, other big enterprises, and then aggregating that, and then looking at the traffic patterns, doing behavior analysis, and then finding out if there are any attacks that are coming and trying to mitigate those attacks. So it's a multi-stakeholder body where multiple stakeholders contribute towards the NCCC, and multiple stakeholders also take intelligence from the NCCC and then use that intelligence to mitigate the threats that are there with in the respective sectors. So, having said this, one of the things about the current threat scenarios. One of the things about the current threat scenarios, the volume of threats that are there is something that we'll have to information that is there. So we have to have automated tools and machine learning tools actually help in learning and addressing this. That is one part. Then also other thing is that you should have active threat hunting. It's not that you wait for an incident to happen, but you should actually be actively threat hunting for finding out where the threats are coming from, and you have systems designed for that. For active threat hunting, so that you detect threats as they happen and then try to mitigate that. So this is another development that is required. The one thing about we talk of secure software development, and that's something that we've been talking for a pretty long time. But our own experience, and we've interacted, sometimes we're getting in the process of getting some modules developed and all. We find even now, when people talk, they actually function more in the level of functionality of what that software module will do, without actually looking at what are the software functionalities that should have in terms of identity management, authentication management, access management. All of those things are not that people talk of when we ask them to do the development activity. So recently we are in process of developing some software, and we find that that is the language that is not currently being talked of. So this is one. So this is where I think education comes in important, and that's where the education institutions play a big role. So that's the secure software development is one part where we have then you have code signing, tamper resistant, hardware that helps in code signing, and then then I think we should also proliferate single sign-on, because actually multiple applications we are people accessing and managing different softwares. There's a tendency for you to go in for the easiest password, and then put that. So that is the vector of compromise. So single sign-on with strong along with multi-factor authentication should help. And the other the infrastructure level in terms of the applications and all, the zero trust architecture, to see that you don't have lateral movement when a person has accessed the infrastructure. You prevent lateral movement. So you have a zero trust architecture to see that lateral movement does not happen and proliferation does not happen. So these are some thoughts I had. And some of the challenge that we still have is the IoT security is one that has not really been addressed. And even in the presentation that was made after this SolarWinds to the Defense Committee in the US, one of the things that was mentioned, the challenges is that the IoT security is one area that has not been addressed and that's required to be addressed. The Telecom Regulatory Authority of India has made a recommendation to the government that we should have a national trust center that has registration of IoT devices, registration of IoT applications, registration of IoT service providers. And so this is one, and I know that the Telecom Engineering Center has set up a committee along with the industry for working out the center. And we from the NSCA, we have a R&D fund, and we're looking forward to partnering with some academic institutions, the TEC, to actually put in place a national trust center, which will address one of the some of the security issues that come up with the doing is, we are funded for the creation of a national malware repository that would help in, now we don't have currently that malware where you people report the malware. So we're going to create a national malware repository. The DRDO is working on that. It will facilitate people to, report malware. It will also facilitate the academic community to, access that malware to do malware research. Then there is also, work on the national threat exchange that is there. One other challenge that we have found is that certain advisories, it's not that certain advisories are going on a regular manner to all the organizations, but we found that there's a deficit in the capacity for the companies to absorb and to consume that advisories. Recently, we were having interaction with an organization and we found that they were talking in terms of 1 year of backlog of addressing the certain advisory, because they recently, partnered with an organization for increasing the cybersecurity posture of that organization. And they found that there's nearly a 1 year backlog of cybersecurity advisories that have been received from certain and not been acted upon, because that organization per se did not have the capacity and the capability to address that. So this is one cause of concern, that the capabilities within organizations to absorb the advisories received from NCIPC or certain. Then other area that requires addressing is app security and mobile data security. Now, we find that a lot of with work from home and proliferation of digital services, this is another area where, and whatever Vaishali madam has talked about, there's the app security and mobile device security is one thing that is required to list. Then in the chat, we have a program from the MAITI called the Information Security Education Awareness Program, and I think that has to be made much more robust and try to reach out more people. They have got awareness programs for school teachers and on the line for school students also for cyber hygiene. And I think one of the things that has to be strengthened is the training and the strengthening of the CISO mechanism in all organizations, because the CISO is primarily the pivot around which organization increases the cybersecurity posture. So these are some of the things that I thought I'd share with you, and I'll have to leave now. I wish you luck for this one-day event. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your address. Indeed, it's been a great learning for us, Srinath, and thank you very much. I understand you have your meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Let me now invite Mr. Sandeep Panik, Additional Commissioner of Police, Western Region, Mumbai. He's a 2004 batch officer of the IPS. He's a graduate in electronics as well as an MBA in marketing. He has held several prestigious posts in Ahmednagar, Jalna, Nanded, and Pune Rural Anti-Corruption Bureau, Thane. He was also Deputy Commissioner of Police, Zone 2 Mumbai and Economic Offence Wing, Mumbai, DIG SRPF, and is presently posted as the Additional Commissioner of Police, West Region, Mumbai. If I may invite you, sir, to make this speech.
Good morning to all esteemed members on this forum today. I must compliment the CII and Tata Communication Center for Digital Transformation for organizing this discussion today. I thank them for giving me the privilege to speak here. Post-COVID scenario in India has been a boom in work from home, study from home, shop from home, and pass time from home. For corporates and all citizens with more than 50 crore net users in India, we need some basic digital safety education and rules, just like we have to learn the basic traffic safety rules. Digitally is where the maximum traffic flows today. For all organizations, big or small, the basic is that all employees, contract workers, labor have to be made cyber aware and cyber safe by creating basic awareness of the dangers lurking and the precautions and alertness needed. Big spendings on cyber security systems need to be supplemented by basic awareness and alertness of all stakeholders. As a police organization, we normally come across a lot of basic crime and fraud, which are quite interesting many times, and many times quite frustrating because people don't want to complain about them on paper. There are frauds and crimes in many social interactions, like what Advocate Mehmet said, matrimony, dating sites, making friends, and sometimes these frauds go on at the level of extortion, blackmail. The COVID scenario, many went online, and a lot of fraud and a lot of orders placed on purchase of liquor, and a lot of complaints were there. That was a very one major issue that has come up after this, especially in the past few months, which has targeted the top people. There have been many sex chat type of blackmailing frauds, where one number contacts you on WhatsApp or your Facebook Messenger, and then some chat happens, and then the video, you are threatened with a video, and that video is you are threatened to upload it on all your Facebook account and everything, and demand start from 20,000 and go up to 20 lakh, 25 lakhs. Along with this, one of the basic frauds like giving of OTP, that is also quite common. So, in fact, some cyber aware person may laugh at it, but these things are quite common, and people share their OTPs very commonly. And of course, the phishing emails which come and people transfer so much money on that. One big challenge to cyber security is the fake news and the disinformation campaigns. Today, more than 80 countries are spending around 5 billion activities. They create havoc in public discourse. Mostly private entities are used for this proxy war because no government wants to be seen doing this dirty work. This has extended not just to the government, but to corporate and financial markets that are manipulated on fake news and rumors. Competition is both domestic and international. Some of the fake news and disinformation campaign that was launched and create problems. I'll just give some examples. The Mumbai Azad Maidan riots, in which the police were targeted, where there were some more photos which were put on the internet and became viral. Recent targeting of Mumbai police in a big time in a famous actor's suicide case, where almost a lakh of bots were used to target the Mumbai police and tarnish the reputation. One more related to corporate is rumors regarding the health of a very senior corporate leader, where such rumors went viral, and the natural repercussions on the stock market. Now, police response from our end has included real-time threat intelligence analysis, identifying the patient zero, the person who influencers and threat actors, and taking strong legal action against them. Mumbai Police has responded by opening 5 new cyber police stations to effectively and speedily register, detect, and fight cybercrime. I would like to appeal on this forum on behalf of the Mumbai Police to contact us for any assistance, as we have resolved to police the cyber world strongly with zero tolerance. Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much for that address, sir. I think what you brought out in terms of the real life experiences and what you have been going through is incredible. Just to keep everything running. And yes, fake news and the bots that are being deployed are certainly making life very, very difficult to actually now discern what is real and what is not, right? With that, let me now invite Professor Avishai Wool from Tel Aviv University. He's also the co-founder of AlgoSec in Israel. He has a BSc cum laude in mathematics and computer science and an MSc and PhD in computer science. He co-founded AlgoSec in 2004 and has served as its CTO since its inception. Before co-founding AlgoSec, he had co-founded Lumeta Corporation in 2000 as a spin-off Bell Labs and was its chief scientist till 2002. At Lumeta, Professor Wool was responsible for transforming the firewall analyzer technology he helped develop at Bell Labs into a commercial product. Earlier, he was a technical staff member at Bell Labs' Secure Systems Research Department, where he led a team of researchers who created the first research prototype for the firewall analyzer. He has published more than 110 research papers and holds 13 US patents and has served on the program committee of the leading IEEE and ACM conferences on the computer and network security. Over to you, sir.
I hope you can hear me well now. Thank you for inviting me to this conference. When I was invited, I thought, what would be interesting for me to share for this audience to hear? And since 2020 has ended not long ago, I thought it would be interesting to share some thoughts on observations on the last year and attempt to make some predictions about what might be happening in 2021, specifically about cybersecurity. So my company AlgoSec is a software vendor in the network security policy management business. And I would like to share some of these observations with you. Specifically, I have 5 points for you to think about. And without further ado, let me start with the first one. So this is not news, really, and I think some of the earlier speakers mentioned this, but working from home has been forced upon us by COVID-19, and organizations have had to rethink their business models as a result of national lockdowns, social distancing guidelines, and so on. So almost overnight, workforces were instructed to work from home. And for almost a year, offices remain quite empty. In fact, research from Stanford University shows that 42% of the US workforce was working from home in 2020. I'm sure the situation in India is similar. Now, the point is, many people thought that this was temporary, that all of this working from home is something that will go away once vaccination programs are established and are widespread. And I think this is not quite accurate. I think that working from home is going to be a permanent fixture in 2021. First of all, the pandemic is not over, but even beyond, I think that we're going to come to a new balance point, and organizations are going to have substantial parts of their workforce continue to work from home, even beyond the end of the pandemic, which I truly hope we'll see during 2021. So from a network security perspective, this is actually kind of a dramatic change, because the way networks are organized is changing. People working from home brings, fragments the borders of the networks. It places a lot more emphasis on things like remote access from the homes, also on securing home equipment, BYOD, bring your own devices. These types of equipment that are under weaker or maybe no control from central IT bring challenges and new threats to organizations, and this is something that network security professionals will need to deal with. This is part of, I think this is going to be part of the new normal. So we need to adjust. We need to realize that working from home is here to stay in much larger amounts than it was before, and we need to put together the necessary controls and processes and tooling to help that go forward without losing control of our networks, without increasing risk. So that was my point number one. Kind of obvious, but still. The next thing, my second point to think about, is about infrastructure modernization. So this is, again, a trend that's been ongoing for some time now, for several years. Organizations have moved parts of their network to the public cloud, and it's becoming increasingly popular over the last few years. And the pandemic has accelerated this. So consulting firm McKinsey estimates that during 2020, digital transformation has accelerated by up to 7 years in 1 year. So there is part of the impact of the pandemic is that transformation to the cloud has accelerated. Now, if we think about why that's happening, why are organizations moving so quickly towards cloud environments, I think there's a couple of reasons. The first is the agility. Okay, so cloud vendor systems are more flexible, and this flexibility can support the speed that organizations expect, the speed for making change. Speed is becoming very important, and cloud vendors offer solutions to support that. So this is a good reason why customers are going there. And the second reason is more financial. Now, it's not necessarily cheaper. If you do a long-term calculation of cost, it's not clear that cloud estates are cheaper than on-premise solutions. However, it is definitely more convenient to purchase because you can do that using operational expense budgets, OPEX budgets, rather than capital expenses. And this is sometimes very important to organizations. So the combination of these two things, both the finances and the flexibility, drive the move towards public cloud environments. And we're seeing this move even in very conservative verticals, such as governments and financial institutions. All of these organizations are moving larger and larger portions of their network estate to the cloud. And I think this is going to continue well into 2021 and beyond. Now, again, this move poses an ongoing challenge for network security professionals because the requirements remain the same. You still need to secure your organization just like you always did. You have to worry about your data, you have to worry about regulation, you have to worry about all the usual things. Nothing has changed from the requirements point of view just because some of the estate is in the cloud. However, the tooling is different. You might need different solutions to secure your network. You need to deploy different types of systems. You might need to learn new things, how to control all these new technologies. And this adds complexity and adds challenges. And from what I'm seeing, organizations haven't quite figured out how to do this securely. There's an ongoing learning curve. Security teams are playing catch up and trying to understand and gain some kind of control in this new environment. And this is going to be an ongoing challenge in 2021 as well. If you're thinking of moving additional parts of your network to the cloud, your network security teams need to be aware of this, need to think about how they're going to respond and are they equipped to deal with this. You really don't want to find yourselves on the front pages of a newspaper because you moved your important data to the cloud and all of a sudden you've been breached because of that. The third thing, which is an extension of the move to the cloud, is that really organizations are going to be hybrid, definitely in 2021. So what does this hybrid thing mean? It means that organizations' networking estates are going to be a combination of traditional on-premise servers plus virtualized data centers, software-defined data centers, and then also parts of the estate are going to be in the public cloud. So this combination of these three different types of environment working in conjunction, this creates a complicated environment to secure. And one is the more complications you have, the more misconfiguration errors you might be susceptible to. And in fact, the Verizon 2020 data breach report found that more than 40% of all breaches resulted from misconfiguration errors. Basically, people making mistakes, employees making mistakes, causing their organizations significant risk of breaches, and having multiple different environments with different technologies in a hybrid estate just makes the situation more complicated and more prone to misconfiguration errors. So what can be done to combat this extra complexity in hybrid estates? And I think really the only answer is automation. Automation is really the only way forward to, on one hand, deal with the complexities and avoiding misconfiguration errors. If you automate something, it does not make typing mistakes. It does not forget. So automation is a good way to combat misconfiguration errors. It also addresses the previous issue we talked about, which is agility and speed. If you have larger and larger and more complex networks, you need more complex processes and more, and honestly, you're not going to have enough people to do this. So if you need to be agile, you need to automate. You need to automate your security practice, not just your IT practices. And organizations are moving in this direction. There is a great push towards DevOps approaches and specifically DevSecOps approaches to help automate deployment of network security controls in a predictable and automatic way. And if you haven't looked in those directions, you should. Specifically, you need to focus on systems and tools that are able to automate the management of this hybrid estate. So you need to worry about automated visibility and control of a hybrid estate where you can see from one place what's going on across your on-premise, your virtualized, and your cloud estates in a holistic view that gives you visibility and control. So that was my third point, hybrid estates with automation. The fourth point I want to put to you is really to focus on ransomware. Okay, so ransomware has been a plague of organizations for several years now, and 2020 was no different. Thousands of attacks all over the world with some very scary numbers. Recently, I was on a panel with someone who said that in India, something like 50% of organizations have been subject to ransomware. I'm not sure I'm quoting her accurately, but you get the picture. If you follow the media, it's everywhere. Ransomware is very, very popular. And I think this is going to continue into 2021. I think large corporations, criminals discovered that ransomware is an effective way for them to make money. So I don't expect them to stop. They're going to continue attacking us all. And it means that this type of attack needs to be in organizations' thoughts for 2021. Not so much, will I be attacked, but when will I be attacked? So companies need to think about this. They need to plan for what to do. And there are multiple things that can be done, but I think one of the deepest things that can help is to limit the damage that hackers can cause if and when they gain access to our network. And one way to do this is through a well-known concept called micro-segmentation, which minimizes the damage. It doesn't stop attackers from gaining a foothold, but it does minimize the damage that hackers can do if they gain access. And really the way to do this is by stopping lateral movement across the network. Okay, the goal is for a microsegmented architecture that once an attacker is able to get into a particular part of the network, they should not be able to move freely across the network from one area to another and infect additional areas of the network. So the way to do this is to split the network into multiple segments and introduce network filters at all the cross points between these different segments. And of course, place restrictive policy on the types of traffic that can go across from segment to segment. So this sounds very easy when I just say it as in a couple of sentences. It's not so easy to deploy because it does require re-architecting the network. And it could be a daunting challenge, but it is possible to do. I've actually blogged extensively about how to do this. If you Google for my name and the word microsegmentation, you'll find a wealth of material, including blueprints of how to organize a microsegmentation project, what you can do about it, and how you can control this process. And I think it's very important for organizations, large and small, to think this way, because it might happen to you this year. So be prepared. You don't want to be completely shut down when some employee clicks on a phishing email, as one of the earlier speakers said, and has their computer infected. You don't want that event to cause shutdown of your entire network, and you don't want to be facing payments of large sums of money. Go along with this microsegmentation strategy, there's another thing that organizations really should think about, and that is planning a playbook. Okay, what am I going to do when ransomware hits me? Not if, but when. What should I do? We should think about this in advance and put together a playbook, ideally an automated playbook that is just a mouse click away to start activation. And really the first thing that you need to do once you're under ransomware attack, under an active attack, in the immediate response, in the early hours of the attack, what you really need to do is to shut down your network around the infected parts of it. If you know which offices are infected, which data centers are infected, you need to shut down communication into and out of that part of your network immediately. You don't want to start thinking about this once the alarms go off. You need to have a plan in place, recorded and supported by automation tools, so that when you are told that in this part of your network you have an ongoing infection, you can click the big red button and shut the communication into and out of that area immediately. So if you haven't thought of this, you really should, and you should also put together the right tooling to support this big red button to do the work for you. Okay, the last thing I want to bring to your attention, and this really continues what Mr. Nath said earlier, this is the fallout from the SolarWinds attack. So toward the end of 2020, we witnessed an unprecedented attack on the SolarWinds company and against its customers, which was carried out by apparently a nation-state actor, a very sophisticated attack, which basically used the software produced by SolarWinds to gain access to SolarWinds customers, some of which were government and sensitive institutions. And really the customers were the target, not so much the software company SolarWinds. Now, from the point of view of the software industry, this kind of attack has some very serious ramifications. Okay, put yourselves in the shoes of SolarWinds. Okay, what could they have done? Well, obviously there are things that can be done to protect themselves against this type of attack. But it's quite difficult because the adversary here that SolarWinds was up against was not a criminal. It was not financially motivated. This was a nation state. Okay, this is an attack by professional hackers, probably a team of a few thousand people working to gain access to that organization's software with the goal of attacking their customers. So protecting yourself as a company from this type of attack, from this level of threat, is not impossible, but it's very expensive and very disruptive. Basically, every software vendor that wishes to really defend its customers against such a motivated and well-heeled attack, defense contractor. This is what defense contractors do, right? They have, processes in place and systems in place and work methodologies and so forth to help them defend themselves and their customers against other nations. But civilian software suppliers don't necessarily think of themselves as defense contractors, and they don't put together that type of work environment and those types of tools to protect themselves against foreign governments attacking them. So this is actually, this could be an earthquake, right, in the software market. If, as Mr. Nath said, governments are going to say, okay, we need our software suppliers, including our civilian software suppliers, to tighten their security to the point where they are able to resist attacks by foreign governments. This is going to be difficult to address. I'm not sure every software vendor will want to or be able to afford to subject itself to such processes and controls. We could see a fragmentation in the software market where only certain vendors are well-heeled enough and are willing to go those extra miles to be able to sell to governments that require such controls. So far, I have not seen this happening quite yet, but as we've heard from Mr. Nath, governments are thinking about these things, and they'll take their time figuring out what to do, but this could be happening, and this is something to pay attention to during 2021. And with I'd like to finish by quoting a very nice song that I'm a fan of, from an old song from 1986 by the band The Pretenders. The song says, something's changed, some stay the same. Okay, I think 2021 is going to be an interesting year, and let's keep tracking that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Wool. And again, talking about the infrastructure, the ability to isolate, compartmentalize. I think the 5 points that you made are very, very insightful. And there's a lot to do. And then, of course, if one is up against a state actor with unlimited resources, pretty much, it can get pretty daunting to defend ourselves. But, well, very well understood. Thank you very much. With that, I would like to now invite Ms. Benita Guerra, co-chair, CII Telecommunications Center for Digital Transformation, for the concluding remarks. But before I do that, a quick introduction. Benita heads the Bangalore and Pune centers of Dell EMC. She is responsible for site-level programs and operations and works very closely with global functional leaders to build world-class competency centers that live and breathe the Dell Technologies culture code. Innovation, business growth, acceleration, collaboration, employee engagement, and best practices to drive operational efficiencies are some of the key areas that Vinita is responsible for. Over to you, Vinita, for the concluding remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Center for Digital Transformation, I would like to thank you all for your inspiring address at this opening session of a very important conference on DX Secure titled Create a Cybersecurity Strategy for Your Company in the Current Scenario. As we all know, cybersecurity goes hand in hand with digital transformation, and having the right technology stack and solutions isn't enough. We need a whole ecosystem where laws, organizations, skills, cooperation, and technical implementation would need to be in harmony to be effective. Mr. Narendranath, Joint Secretary, National Security Council, Secretariat, Government of India, rightly shared how education at the college level is important. We thank him for taking from his busy schedule and sharing with us the progress being done by various bodies and the Government of India in the cybersecurity space. Thank you, Mr. Sandeep Karnik, for sharing your insights as the person on the forefront of where we hear about the various complaints in this space and taking us through some of the challenges being faced in the cybersecurity arena, the known, the unknown, and the threats that exist. I would like to thank Professor Wool. I was really interested when you were discussing just coming from the technology space, your informative address on the cybersecurity, sharing your global perspective of the subject was amazing. Your point that this is an ongoing challenge and something that we have to be constantly on the vigil was fabulous. Thanks also for emphasizing the importance of agility and automation while we build our solutions. We're indeed very privileged to hear your views. Thank you, Ms. Vaishali, for joining us at this conference and sharing the legal aspects that are extremely important from the cybersecurity standpoint. The examples you shared, and especially the Dr. Couple example, who with the right intent, but unfortunately they got caught up in the fake body that used the IRDA name. It was eye-opening, and it can happen with anyone. A big thank you to you, Mr. Amit Sinha, Roy, for sharing your views and steering the proceedings of this opening session so fabulously well. As was mentioned earlier, from here we have three important sessions related to the subject of cybersecurity, which is network security, unified threat management, and cloud security, which will witness CIOs and experts from organizations who will discuss and deliberate upon the challenges being faced by companies. And we'll also like to discuss the best course of action for creating a cybersecurity strategy, keeping in mind the vulnerabilities being faced. I would like to thank you all once again for joining us today and request the participants of this conference and the large number of CIOs from various industry sectors to remain connected as we move on to the next session, Network Security, Aligning Network and Security Transformation. Thank you.
Colonel, we'll hand the program back to you.
Thank you, Vinita. Thank you all the panelists of the opening session. Now, I would like to invite the panelists of the next session, the session on network security, aligning network and security transformation. I would like to introduce Mr. Deepak Talwar, the moderator of this session, and I would like to briefly introduce him. He is the National Security Officer of Microsoft India. He has experience of over 20 years as a security expert, and he has been leading the digital transformation and cybersecurity systems in Microsoft and within other organizations. He is responsible for transforming organizations adopt an intelligent cloud building security strategy with advanced technologies such as IoT, AI, blockchain, and as a security expert empowering organizations solving security challenges within business environments to remain safe. Over to you, Mr. Talwar.
Just a quick check.
Yes, you are visible and audible as well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Kavita, for this opportunity. Without further ado, let me, thank first of all on this virtual conference on DX Secure, create a cybersecurity strategy for your company in the current scenario. In some of these sessions in the morning started with 3, Narendra ji, and then the distinguished industry leaders, hearing about how the new robust strategy and policies cannot just go hand in hand with the traditional way. Professor Wool rightly mentioned that there has to be an impact-based analysis which may have to be done with many of, whether it is focusing on ransomware specifically or creating an approach which is more of an holistic view of security. It's a privilege to be on the virtual dais covering a panel on network security, aligning network security and security transformation as the topic. To introduce, this is great opportunity to talk about our panelists who are part of today's session. Mr. Sunil David, welcome, Sunil. I hope I'm audible and visible to you.
Yes, I can. Thank you so much. Thanks, Deepak.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm taking that opportunity to introduce you. Sunil is a regional director, IoT, India and ASEAN for AT&T Global Network Services India Private Limited. Close to 27 years of experience in IT and telecom industry. As a regional director based out of Chennai, he's also responsible for IoT strategy for India and ASEAN region, working plethora of it. Sunil, congratulations being recognized 2019-2020 as the India's fastest growing leader, pride of the nation. This is pride for us as well. Very, very congratulations to you. And Sunil, seeing that recognition, we will have a lot of good two-way communication for the audience and for everyone to learn how we are embracing and thinking of network security moving forward. Right? Welcome, Sunil.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Vijay Kumar, for the opportunity. I hope I'm visible and audible to you. Just want to make sure that we communicate.
Yeah, thanks, Deepak. You're audible, loud and clear.
Now, this is again an opportunity, Mr. Vijay, the dynamic professional leader with 25 plus years of, functional experience into Indian Army. It's a grateful effort where we get that learning, and to the corporate sector and information tech, security and telecom domain. We have to do a lot of learning today on telecom with network security. And he is present the leader cybersecurity engineering at Geo platform. This is plethora of things. Fortunately, representing Microsoft, we are doing with a lot of Geo platform and seeing how things are taking up with the cyber at the next level. Professionally, Vijay holds gold medals both in BTech and NIT Hamirpur and MTech IT from IIT Roorkee with ample of security certifications. A lot to learn during our conversation. Vijay, a warm welcome again. I also have Mr. Jaspal, if I can hear from him.
Hi, Deepak. Hi, everyone. Yes, absolutely. Good morning and greetings of the day, everyone.
Jaspal, this is another, how should I say, the partner in the crime, the way we say the industry partners, and we are privileged for several years knowing Jaspal from industry as well as, moderating some panels. But before doing from global CISO, as well as representing the industry from Tata Communication, a plethora of 20 decades of experience, which we would like to hear, Jaspal, from you. Heartiest welcome to the virtual forum today.
Thanks for having me here, Deepak. Look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Great. I think to set the tone very clearly, I just want to have 3-4 minutes to give the perspective which we talk about, though network security falls on a larger perspective when we talk about InfoSec. And then in a decade coming earlier, last 10 years, we got into the world of cybersecurity, so-called a subset which talks more on the defensive part or the defender's part. And that one of the core specific area talks about a lot to do with network or network security. And we will try to, explore more. In this context, just coming from a organization representing Microsoft as a CISO, in the recent 2020 September to October, we have released one of the defense report, and I thought that's best opportunity to share because it is so generic, where cyber crime is the contemporary issues of the day. So if something is happening today on COVID, if something is happening today on Prime Minister's funds, COVID funds, if something is happening about building a medicine to take care in the healthcare provider segments, all have become the contemporary issues of the day for the attackers to go. So they are moving with the time, with the activities, whether it is enterprise, governments, or even for startups, very small startups who may not have that money to build their capabilities for survival, and now they're also struggling to look into plethora of cyber attacks. And the key message I would like to highlight, the data and signals from the cross-company teams have three top levels which came into the sharpest focus. One was cybercrime. The second was state threats, Wool talked about it. And the third one is the remote workforce. Now, these three has got into shifting the entire focus to a ransomware, then to a standard type of attack. It has shifted a focus to more of a phishing attack than to do a standard emailer type of only attacks. And at a nation state threat, which is not just relevant only to financial fraudulent activity, it is impacting the technologies, operations, legalities, policy work, everything we think through. And the last important piece which we dwell down is remote workforce. So COVID-19 became the catalyst, if I can say, for managing, the disruptions attempted on any of those platforms, right? And it can be anywhere. We have seen that in the latest supply chain attack, one of the largest attacks of our winds, and very rightly pointed out with earlier sessions that this needs to be looked into a very different way. It is not just about, stopping threats at the gateway. Coming to our topic, it is more important today even to get those contexts set very, very right while we are talking about network security. This is actually the core central part of digital age. And needless to say, we cannot live only on silo product or technology, neither on the skills of people, or neither on the one leg of processes. So the way we call people, process, and technology now working hand in hand, because network security traditional way has gone absolutely out of the context. I hope you all will agree, Jaspal, Sunil, Vijay. This is how we are seeing network is blurred. We are sitting with the data. I was learning, I think, from Vinay, Vijay, and Sunil while we were talking about the petabytes of data which is being exploded, and the type of traffic which is going around in transit in microseconds. And then you need to work hard to clarify and close those loops without having security being disrupted. And the most important part, when we talk about network disruptions, we also have to see the data should not get changed on the way, on transit, on rest, or on the move, wherever it is. And the third part, you are not living with that data while it is transiting through the network, blur network, by the way, at on premises. It is lying there, then hybrid, then so-called public, and that's how the multi-cloud environment becomes imperative and the core part of our discussion. Without taking the time, I would like to start the conversation, more of a dialogue, if you allow me today, to get into the conversation. Vijay, I thought I'll start with you to give you throwback a point where we see, the role of the network security is one of the key subsets, as I shared earlier. How do you redefine in current scenario the role of security to protect the organization, especially from the IT infrastructure side? And if you can touch upon how do you capitalize seeing the viruses to zero-day threat, to denial of services, adware, so many things are happening. Just to hear the context from you, Vijay.
Okay, thank you, Deepak. You rightly touched about that network security is the critical control that we have nowadays in the organization. I view network security in 4 pillars. What we say is a protection control, as a detection control, third pillar as a compliance control, and the fourth pillar as a testing, where we have to continuously test our controls using a red teaming activity. When I say a protection control, what traditionally we have been looking at only at the parameters. So I will like to redefine this parameter. The 2 parameters now, one is external parameter and one parameter toward the user segment, where our own trusted users, they commit. So it is no longer that a trust DMZ, non-DMZ, and the 3 segments altogether. So in addition, between these 2 parameters, between external and internal parameters, whatever lies in between, there we have to implement micro-segmentation, as that was discussed in the previous panel. So coming to the protection controls, when we say at central services, earlier we were considering only resources at integrated data centers or the on-prem resources.
Right.
Now those things are changing now because last 1 year, because of COVID scenario, a lot of workloads have been created in the cloud environment. That security varies there, and with 5G coming in as well as IoT devices getting increased there, so we have very high bandwidth at the edge itself, and those devices have to function with a very low latency period. Let us say 2 driverless cars coming together, so decision should not happen at the center, but decision should happen at the edge itself. So a lot of things we need to push it as at the edge. So another thing which is there is the protection control traditionally was getting established only by the firewalls. But some places, because of high bandwidth requirements, we can't leave it to firewall. We have to implement controls at the switch levels itself. Let us say we have a video streaming services like GeoMeet, where things can't be left to firewalls. And coming to cloud, so we have to have network security groups, because firewalls in the cloud, they say the scalability exists there, but they're building scalability by using a load balancer where original IP is lost. So a lot of things and work has to be done at the VNet level, NSGs and automation of those NSGs, so that we can implement a similar kind of controls there. The another thing which I say, network security is no longer a domain of only firewalls. So what you need to build this along with this is an intrusion prevention system with both things built into that, a deep packet inspection as well as net flows where you can get the basic parameters. Again, high bandwidth there again faces challenges. You can't have one-to-one sampling. Like in our case, when we have terabytes of data coming in, so our sampling rate reduces to around 1:8K. And that also reducing also is around 10 kbps. It's a huge amount of data which needs to be processed, which is around 242 Mbps per second net flows to be absorbed, analyzed for network behavior, detection of outliers there. And similarly, once you place NIPS, there also we are carrying out optimizations, like on a higher bandwidth interface, you put a detection mode. On a low bandwidth interfaces or a critical interfaces, you put them in the prevention mode. Again, you can't have n number of SNOT signatures or the intrusion prevention signatures deployed. So we couple it along with our tenable security scans, where we enable rules, let us say top 10 vulnerabilities, and the vulnerabilities which have been discovered by our application security team, and the vulnerability and the mobile assessment vulnerabilities which are detected on our assets, so that we have limited number of rules which are primarily focused onto the assets which are vulnerable. And the third thing that we have established is the identity firewall. Now we combine both identity services in terms of Active Directory authentication logs, so that a particular IP is bound by a user. Let us say there is a customer support application, which at the network layer, it is open to the entire enterprise. But if I combine identity with that, so that particular portal will be open to only selected users at the network layer control. Though the application level control again exists there. And then you have to build this network security with another compensatory protection controls, like you have outgoing traffic only via the centralized proxy, okay, and block everything else. So this comes as well as the first pillar which I was discussing regarding the protection control. Then you need to have a compliance control, like we have around more than 200 firewalls. So the policies there needs to be audited, and it can't happen manually. So you need to have an auditing tool. Let me give an example here. Somebody is troubleshooting an application there. He is open certain ports, unnecessary ports, or and when nothing is working, he said allow all for all ports. Generally happens at the blur of the moment when something is going to launch. But we need to review such kind of risky rules, or rules which are designed, which are lying redundant, which are not hit at all. So this has to be done. And the fourth pillar, which I told regarding the red teaming or the testing activity, there you test the efficacy of these protection controls. And then you measure the efficacy, whether you are able to remediate or block that particular IP or not, and how much is the response time. We have a particular KPIs like mean time to remediate, that how long you build it to remediate there. Coming to your detection controls, there comes that all these controls that we have established, they send a huge amount of logs in terms of firewall ECL logs, or in terms of your net flows, and they need to be correlated together. So traditional SIEM there, they fail there. So what we need to take it, we take it into a big data platform, analyze it, build AI ML models to find outliers, both as far as network behavior, as far as user behavior. So a lot of things that we get into this, like the people communicating to outbound CNC servers, which have come in the threat intel. So all four pillars, they work together to secure an organization's network. So that's what we do here, and that's what an organization should do to secure its network.
You're on mute.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So this was an opportunity, seeing the four pillars. Thank you for bringing that. Let's talk about the product and technology, or the SIM, which is standard way of failure. We alert fatigue, 10 humans sitting 24/7 monitoring and looking into thousands of lines coming up to look into where that things are, though there is a discussion earlier happened on automation and procedure as well, which is rightly pointed out. And then the regulatory and processes. I would like to point two things and then take the opportunity to hear from Sunil as well on some of the telco related activity. Just to summarize, when Vijay mentioned that, it knocked my mind, if I can summarize, that the traditional perimeter when we talk is obsolete in any case, the way we do, because it's actually blurred. Maybe we all have learned. I would like to put that point, and we can debate later on if time permits, on zero trust model, which is a journey to be absorbed by everyone. And what Vijay also mentioned, if I can categorize in a traditional way, we used to safeguard identities, devices, application, infrastructure, and network. And now we are moving, more like an egress ingress, which is touched in one way when we talk about cloud or authentication, and similarly for identity and all. With that point, I would like to get to Sunil to find out, how are you seeing those practices, innovation, and real-time use cases, what Vijay just mentioned, and not just from network security. Maybe you want to elaborate more from work from home conditions, or rather now we are going permanently on hybrid, many of the organizations' work environment. And if there are any major challenges, Sunil, you saw during such scenarios relevant to telco, or even in your organization, with some examples.
Right, Deepak, thanks for inviting me for this panel. So I'm going to give a telecom service provider's perspective to this whole discussion. And if you just step back a bit, if you just look at the market trends last year, we are kind of shifting to a software-centric cloud and network model, And what were the factors that are driving these market trends? You touched upon remote work, people are obviously working from home. Vijay talked about, the fact that, you're not using the apps on the data center. Companies are now adopting a lot more cloud. And we actually started to see a lot more multi-cloud environments, very highly automated, elastic clouds. Now, the one thing which I wanted to really stress is this whole aspect of how network and security are converging. This networking and security convergence. And in this context, I thought I'll share with you, this whole SASE framework. So in fact, Gartner coined this term 2019, a secure access service edge. And see, earlier, when service providers had to approach an organization, we would obviously have separate discussions with the CIO and a separate discussion with the CISO. Now, with network and security converging, the need is to engage with all the stakeholders together. Right? I think that is what is happening. And what we're also started to see, interestingly, Deepak, is that networking companies are now acquiring security products. For example, a good example being, Palo Alto Networks, a security vendor acquiring a networking company. Palo Alto Networks acquiring CloudGenix, a great example. Cisco has been very aggressive in trying to acquire a lot of security companies. So like that, we started to see all these acquisitions because they want to make sure that they are able to offer an end-to-end security solution to an enterprise, right? Now, when you talk about SASE, essentially, Deepak, there are 4 or 5 important aspects when you talk about a SASE framework, and I very briefly wanted to touch upon each. The first thing, of course, which you talked about, the zero trust network access, so the application awareness and the identity-based access, very, very important. You don't want access to applications to every user, so obviously you don't trust anyone. So ZTNA definitely is a big part of that framework. The second thing is SD-WAN, Deepak, software-defined WAN, which is a very important component of the whole thing. So your whole virtualization of the WAN network,
your edge connectivity, abstraction, so that plays a very, very important part. And we started to see a lot more companies today adopting SD-WAN, software-defined WAN, where you can have application awareness, you can assign priority for applications. So typical architectures of company enterprise networks are also changing, unlike earlier where you had two private MPLS networks. Today you're using a secondary link, using SD-WAN, to connect to the internet, and you're getting the very similar kind of performance what you're getting on the earlier MPLS. The third thing is to offer firewall as a service and have the firewall on the cloud, a stateful firewall. Unlike the typical, architectures where the firewall is on-prem, but when you have the firewall on the cloud, you can scrub the traffic on the cloud itself and then ensure that you pass clean traffic to the customer. So to offer firewall as a service, maybe based on number of hours, you could decide on the model. But that's also another important aspect of the SASE framework. The fourth thing is, the fact that you have users sitting at home accessing web applications. You need to have the secure web gateway to monitor the URLs and filter it and all the stuff. So that becomes very, very important, given that you have no control on what the users are accessing. And the fine thing is because of the fifth thing is because of the fact that we are using multi-cloud environments now to use CASB, a Cloud Access Security Broker, and for the SaaS visibility. So I think from a from a SASE standpoint, I think it's important to have that kind of a framework built in to make sure that you're able to secure your users, secure your applications data on the cloud and all that stuff. I just wanted to add one point here, and that is while we talk about trying to secure your data and applications, Vijay talked about IoT. So I think with a lot more assets now connecting to the internet, the need to secure the IoT devices. So security by design principle becomes very, very important. So your device obviously has to be secure. And when we talk about IoT, it has to be a very holistic approach because you got to secure the device, secure the network. So you obviously have an APN through which you're routing the traffic through the network, or you could have an IPsec tunnel through which your traffic can be routed on. And then, of course, you got to secure the applications and data on the network. And for that, you need a very good platform to manage the whole thing. Device management platform, connectivity management platform, and all this stuff. Because last year, we saw a significant increase in threats. The threat surface widened. A lot of IoT devices were hacked. So I think we'll have to look at that aspect as well when you talk about networking security. The need to also secure the assets which are now being connected to the internet, Deepak. So that's my initial comments on this.
Wow. This blown away, that I'm trying to revise what you mentioned as a SASE platform. We have been through that, like a zero trust journey. It's very, very imperative. The SD-WAN, this is a software centric approach. It's very, very critical. We have seen that, especially when we see that white traffic going on, you get into a denial of services or DDoS, another type of interesting thing. And you rightly mentioned when we are getting into AI and ML, the impact are both sides. We say AI, ML, you're going to use it equally. The cyber criminals are going to utilize the same technologies, and seeing those things create a lot of things. And then stateful firewall inspection has been there for a decade and now coming into more active forms. And similarly, the plethora of the information which is being shared. This is a good set tone, Sunil. Thank you for bringing that up, especially on the example piece of it. If time permits, I will come back to you on more sampling and scenario, if you can touch a little bit on AI and all. I have a privilege and opportunity to combine your thoughts together with somebody whom I have been, while, Jaspal, you may not recollect, we were struggling last year when we were trying to see national cybersecurity strategy, thanks to General Pant, Shri Narendra Nathji and team, while we were thinking all together as an industry to see how cybersecurity comes up. What Sunil just mentioned earlier, Vijay, it is imperative. We are living in a country and representing Microsoft with government. A lot of time I'm seeing we are talking about IoT in security. We have consumer IoT best practices into the play coming up. The blockchains, regulatory and guidelines are in processes, right? And thanks to Niti Aayog, another think tank with METI, which we talk about AI, which is getting the foundation, especially when we talk about not just IT. Every company is an IT company, if I can say, or a software company, if can be rightly mentioned by our MD Anant Maheshwari. So this is how we are saying every company is a software company and IT company. So it can be farmers who are looking for those technologies and all. I want to combine that together for a tough question to Jaspal, because I know he can answer that beautifully. How you are seeing, after hearing from Vijay and Sunil, you may have seen a network security among largest in enterprise and SMB. Where do you see the roadmap for network security, and you can expand that more to the overall security and cloud model, how the cyber attacks have been looking for the roadmap as next 3 to 5 years, and how do you see that managing this such high pace of traffic, Jaspal? You can guide, seeing the industry.
Thanks for leading to this very good foundation which Mr. Vijay and Sunil kind of brought in. Am I audible? Clear?
Very much. Very
Okay.
good. Yep.
So I think while Mr. Vijay spoke very nicely about some of the very foundational and basic underpinnings of a strong network security posture, because I firmly believe that while the industry shifts to the new paradigms, new sort of frameworks, new models, some of those basics are there to stay, and they should not be undermined. They should not be trivialized. In the security strategy by the security leaders and everybody else who's supporting technology in some way. Sunil also brought in a good sort of, reference to SASE, and maybe I build upon that story and how I see this. I'm just quoting some industry statistics. Some of you may have read these already, so pardon me if it's a repeat, but I'll build on to my thoughts from there. But by 2023, 20% of the enterprises would have adopted secure web gateway, CASB, ZTNA, FWAS capabilities from the same vendor. So I'm highlighting the possibility and the directional shift in the vendor convergence also from less than what it was about 5% in 2019. And likewise, by 2024, this percentage is expected to shift upwards to about 40%. So adoption of SASE is clearly being driven, seen, and strategized as a digital business enabler more than just solving a security problem. Now, going back to some of these references made to the conventional network security architectures, perimeterless organizations, endpoints being the new perimeters, more compute at the edge, and then all of these things. Clearly, some of the network security architectures were more relevant for the era where the data center was at the center of enterprise compute. I think we got to be cognizant of this shift, because if we don't, then we continue to invest solely into protecting one side of the breach and entry, whereby we may be overlooking and marginalizing the threats which are on the expanded threat surface, on the endpoints, on the edge, and the whole contextualization and a very sort of a flexible network fabric through which now the new age digital enterprises look forward to connect their stakeholders. And more so with the cloud first shift over the last few years, I think we all know more user work is being performed off the enterprise network than on the enterprise network. There is more infrastructure getting delivered as IaaS and more applications getting consumed via SaaS than on-prem. So clearly the path for convergence on network as a service and network security as a service to deliver what Gartner calls a secure access service edge, which Sunil also briefly introduced. This path has already been paved over the last few years, even though the name formally may have been coined in 2019. I think directionally that shift began much earlier. This, in my opinion, has also triggered the underlying shift from managing the security boxes and appliances to becoming a more policy-aware, software-defined secure access to stay effective in an infinitely tailorable network environment. So clearly the need for a fine-grained dynamic access control with contextualized security controls closer to the edge is the underpinning for a successful SASE deployment. Now, SASE is emerging as an offering combining software-defined wide area network services, like Sunil mentioned, the same vendors trying to expand their portfolios, bringing in more convergence with the network security functionality across SWG, CASB, ZTA, etc. So bases the identity of the entity, the real-time context on where they are coming from, what channel of access they use, the same set of enterprise policies can be applied for a continuous assessment of risk throughout the session of access. And that's what really SASE is about. More contextualization, more real-time controls, closer to the access, and brought onto the endpoints. That's my initial take on the topic, Deepak, if this sits in well with the direction of the discussion.
Which I can talk about is the flow which you brought on combining, not the way just Vijay, Sunil, us were trying to put it from an industry perspective. I think the 4 pillars which Sunil talked about is also having that interesting approach, and then SASE, and then getting into network. You're right. This came pretty early. It's the naming conventions which got into, and obviously then we get into the traditional way of Gartners and the quadrants to look how things are. But I would like to take one step further before putting that questions back, is the word which was used like convergence. And when Vijay talked initially about setting the tone of IT infrastructure of type of attacks, right? It is very important to look into that. We are now talking about 40 plus vendors. Like in our organization, we say, Jaspal rightly pointed out, the shift we mostly cover security, we miss compliance. And if we take compliance, we talk compliance as silo. And earlier, identity was absolutely separate. It is more like just identifying ourselves virtually and then, doing a multi-factor authentication or securing your identity. Now, we are calling it as security, compliance, identity as an integrated approach. And that's where, whether you are on endpoint, because in work from home, most of the organization have gone endpoint as their edge, right? So it's like I'm directly connecting from my home to the internet, and there is no corporate network, or or I have to go through the corporate VPN always. Very much difficult to get into those situations, or to do the investment setting that hardware software for a smaller company. So seeing that, the network perimeter, the type of SASE models, the zero trust approach, the SD-WAN approach goes very, very well fine. I wish the integrated solutions are also moving in one more direction to conclude. Security, compliance, identity, and management. Because end of the day, when we talk with so much of things, how are you managing it, seeing something as a single glass pane? It's fortunate that I'm part of Microsoft who are moving in that same direction. Needless to say, not to minimize the small products and technologies. They are really doing great work, but how do you great work has to come on a pane, single pane, to minimize the operational resilience. With that, I'm turning back, Vijay, to you with limited time in hand. I just wanted to steal some information. More to do is what is the realistic thing you are seeing, if you can touch a little bit on AI ML, seeing the current approach and the roadmap, how that goes well both sides. For cyber criminals also they will be using, and I know AI and ML you can utilize to have a minimum response time by utilizing an algorithm, so that detection can happen fast, which we heard from Sunil as well and Jaspal as well. Any thoughts, Vijay, on that?
So I will just bring and combine this thing with the work from home environment. So what had happened that once we started working from home, your office parameter that vanished. Along with that, your enterprise network. So you have to build something where they come onto a VPN, and then accordingly you have to put a detection rules in that place. So you have to create a user segment VPN, support VPN, or developer VPNs. So the moment you started monitoring this, so the traditional SIM, etc., they failed in the sense that the use cases could not be developed on that. That is where we leveraged AI ML models. I will give a typical use case. Let us say access or a secure login happening to our production servers. So you got only 4 or 5 variables, like from which IP it has happened, what time it has happened, what geographic region it has happened there. So you need to build on the models on that and identify say 10-minute windows, like what is happening, and identify outliers there, both on 3-4 things. One is the time window based, another is your geographic location based, another is which particular zone it is lying in that base. And that has given us a lot of inputs, like people, our agents are supposed to work from India. So once we started getting IPs from abroad, or one person sharing his maybe credential, and we can find suddenly that he is logging from Calcutta, the same IP, same agent ID got logging from Mumbai also. That is why a lot of outliers were caught, and we could build that kind of a use case only by leveraging AI ML into our detection methodology.
Excellent. Excellent. I mean, thank you for that, the example which gives a real scenario. You rightly mentioned more. I remember, coming very quickly with time limit, Sunil, you might have seen times work from home was not just work from home for IT. The productivity and collaboration was boom, or the OTT platform when we get lazy time to watch anything digitally. All was having the same current of data and traffic flying through, right? And somehow behind the scenes, I feel that everything on collaboration, I have witnessed many education community, IT firms, small firms getting cyber crimes, non-fraudulent, but getting into the productivity tool while you and me are talking virtually. Many people get into that. A lot of security issues and concerns we have raised and highlighted and seen. Seeing the productivity side and the technology side, Sunil, what is your view of building that AI, ML? Just an example, you can take IoT and others. How do you see that embrace helping and seeing that you share on petabytes of the traffic coming up? Any sampling scenarios you would like to share?
Sure, sure, Deepak. So we had acquired one company called Alien Bolt a few years back, very strong in the threat intelligence space, and they provide threat intelligence updates continually and automatically. And three parts to it: data collection and security analysis, threat detection and classification, and then of course the orchestration and the automation. And when you're dealing with this humongous amount of data, I think the need to have what is called software-defined security that becomes very, very important when you're dealing with so much of data. So this whole approach should be software-defined from a security standpoint. Now, what we have done is we have built a USM, a platform, through which we can actually able to get about 20 million threat indicators daily. And we have about 145,000 security practitioners who are, in partnership with public, private, open source. So there's a lot of, threats that we are able to get onto our platform. And just to give you some numbers, Deepak, on an average, every day, we are able to analyze more than 400,000 suspicious URLs and 370,000 malware samples every day. Okay, and we are also having about 1,000 odd honeypots across the world. So so we've got a lot of this data that is coming in. We have built a data lake, and that's where we are actually able to apply AI and machine learning to be able to move to a stage where we can actually predict when a threat might occur. So I think that is very, very important. The need to predict, because see, if you talk about security, it's nothing but risk management. I don't think anyone can claim that they can have a 100% secure environment. There's always some loophole somewhere. The best that one can do is to minimize that risk, right? And what you need to do is what you already have to augment that with threat intelligence. And that's where your AI and machine learning come in, so that you can predict when a threat occurs. And that's exactly what we do, Deepak. So with that data lake that we built in, we are able to, and we have about 8 SOCs across the world. We leverage that and are able to now tell a customer that, hey, I see a potential threat in your network. This is what you can perhaps do to mitigate it. If he's not in a position to do it on his own, for whatever reason, it could be lack of skills within the organization, or maybe the cost for doing it is expensive, we might probably help him in mitigating that threat. So I think the need is now to move from, reacting to a threat to predicting when a threat might occur, and take the necessary action for that, Deepak, in my view.
Wow. Sunil, thank you. This was just further building it up and giving me heat inside the way we are talking about threat intel, the signals. Thank you for bringing some data facts. We all have multiple data facts, but more than that data fact is important, that are you able to minimize the noise? There's too much of noise in network language, we say, in traffic. When we talk about SIM, I'll ask that from Jaspal to help me build that up further. But the idea of minimizing that noise, and what Sunil was trying to mention, Vijay also mentioned, for me, I would call it as minimizing the attack surface area. The minimum the attack surface area is, wherever it is, it minimizes the impact. And very rightly mentioned, not just reactive to proactive, but can you predict? That's where we talked about predictive analysis, cognitive services. Can it behave by vocal, by voice, immediately reacting in the local language, in an Indian language and a foreign language, and minimize those? Can they talk fast? And one more thing, which fairly in technical aspects in forum we talk less, other than in education forum, is the skills and awareness and diversity and inclusion. I would like to bring that also, because Recently, in one of these startups, they communicated and connected to me, and they say we are hiring non-tech people to do the threat intel part, because 80% we have created. Sunil, Vijay, Jaspal, the platform's already there. So it is not the human intentions or technology learning of the engineering background. It is about the intelligence and thinking through the process. So just bringing that points, if you feel it, these are important for audience and as well, to others, that this is how we can think of diversity inclusion as well as embracing the awareness into that in a proactive mode. Taking very quickly the time for Jaspal, rather than asking you a question which was there with me for you more on a cloud or multi-cloud model, how do you see that? I am taking that opportunity, got from a panel, a question I'm reading from Saurabh Gangwar. I would like to know the applicability of blockchain networks, where it has developed fully to be implemented everywhere at nascent stage. Also, they are talking about how we can implement effectively in the IoT network. If later Vijay or Sunil can take that up. Any thoughts you can build around Jaspal or others as well, starting with Jaspal on that?
Yeah, let me first back on some of the points around the cloud security, and then we can build on the questions, and maybe other panelists can also add in, if that's okay, Deepak, with you.
Oh, please, yeah, that will help. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about cloud security, I would want to kind of take a slight shift away from the usual topics of visibility and control, because I think all of us have spoken enough of that, whether through a cloud access security broker or through other technologies. What I wanted to call out in a few minutes is what responsibility does this place on the security providers, and what benefits and opportunities the cloud and the cloud security brings collectively for us as an industry. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about this, because I feel that's very relevant as more and more modern cloud-centric digital businesses take a cloud-first approach. So as the modern enterprises, require secure access everywhere, there is correspondingly a need for secure access services, the mesh, and the latency optimized points of presence to be made available everywhere as well, right? So what security and risk professionals need is a digital enterprise which can be enabled through this fabric of network and network security POPs, which are optimized for latency. And that can be applied when and where needed to connect entities to the network capabilities they need access to. So similarly, enterprise perimeter is no longer a location. It's a set of dynamic edge capabilities delivered when needed as a service from the cloud. So the way I see this converging, and the benefits and the opportunities, also at the same time, some of the challenges what the security leaders need to be aware of, is a shifting trend. And you spoke a little bit about people, or technology replacing people, non-technical people, coming in doing more of threat analytics. Yes, clearly there's a shift in security staff from managing security boxes to understanding the policies and the context more. And the management can be done by automated layers, but devising the right set of policies and bringing in the right intelligence, I think that's where people would still continue to play a pivotal role. Similarly, convergence of vendors offering conventional network services and those providing network security, I think would be a great shift, because as all of us refer to the security theater, where every vendor walks in through the door claiming to solve some part of some problem for us without having to necessarily comprehend what's already available with the enterprise and where it's really doing a value add. I think more convergence at a network service provisioning as well as at a network security layer definitely is a good shift, because it kind of makes the vendor estate more manageable, the solutions more converged, more seamless, and more effective and more secure in the end. Similarly, the leading vendor partners, would need to invest into their cloud security fabric, thereby providing latency optimized routing through the worldwide points of presence, especially relevant for latency relevant apps, which are like your collaboration, UIP, video conferencing, and then other IoT sort of devices, connected vehicles, healthcare. The possibilities are endless. But it's about doing the right implementation, which is latency optimized through deploying the right infrastructure, which brings in the elements of contextualized security policies at the time of access. So I think these are some of the opportunities. This is where the shift is happening. And cloud and cloud first is already happened. But what it means from a security perspective, what are the various opportunities for the providers, what are the various underpinnings, what the security leaders need to watch. I think we are at that cusp of the transition where all of this needs to be watched and managed very carefully if we want to stay secure across various points where the compute today is happening, which is clearly way beyond the enterprise network as we all started. Back to you, Deepak.
So nice, Jaspal. This gives a lot of crisp to cloud part of it. With 5 minutes left, I definitely will come back for each one of you to think a 1 minute point of view, what you feel should be done, or any closing remarks you would like to give. Before that, I'm just borrowing 1 minute to answer some of it relevant to blockchain. While few years back, I was speaking in one of the forum for blockchain, where blockchain came from the basics of talking about always on cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, and that's where, right? The reality is that was one part of it. Even recently, if I've learned correctly in some of the news where we are talking about SBI adopting the blockchain, from the smart wallets and payment wallets and other interaction communication. So one way of looking into it to answer to, I think, Gaurang, is blockchain networks are very well based on the domains. It is not same for the banking, same for manufacturing, same for IT. It is very, very different. The concept may remain. By the way, it's a distributed blockchain as well. You can have your private blockchain, so you can have your public blockchain. So the question you asked, is it as an nascent stage? For every domain or sectors, definitely it may be. But for few sectors, naming like banking, ITES and all, these all are embracing at a very, very advanced stage based on use cases, what they are trying to solve, right? You may not directly solving anything on a blockchain with farming as of today, but you're solving it in the banking 100%, right? And with many third parties coming into the play. I would, also conclude. I think, Sunil, you have a point there?
No, there was one question about how, from an IoT standpoint, how blockchain could play a role. I just wanted to quickly add.
I was passing it to you, Sunil. Yes.
Yeah, so in the IoT, if you just look at the whole IoT architecture, the IoT device is the weakest link in the chain, right? If you're able to compromise the device, then you can really create havoc, right? So you could actually use blockchain for actually device identity and access. So you can add an additional layer of security when you use blockchain, especially from a device. If you're able to integrate that with the device management platform, then you can make sure that you're able to secure your device. I think that will go a long way in that. And then second use case for blockchain, especially if it relates to a company in supply chain, for traceability. And when you're dealing with multiple stakeholders, for example, in supply chain, you're dealing with a logistics provider, manufacturer with multiple suppliers. And then when you can actually create a platform and you have all this data going, and then you need to make sure that you're able to secure that data, for trust becomes very important. And that again, their blockchain could be a potential solution for that use case.
So nice, Sunil. It's same. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I was coming back to you on IoT to seek that help, because traditionally blockchain, the way people have talked about is, we also need to understand blockchain is far more secure. A lot of people have asked me in last decade that how you are seeing, forget about being nascent and advanced. On a normal traditional security, blockchain will surpass, because you don't even know how the identity of, like a virtual ledger, that's where it started, whole concept getting into that. How do you combine seeing the left and right of the blocks are very, very integrated in the algorithm. It is not easy, if I can say fairly, a tamper proof compared to a normal tampering of other things. So it will play a huge role in security as well, building the products based on that. To 1 minute to each of you, with Vijay to come back. I see you now, Vijay, on if you can give a closing remarks, a thought on how do you see things are moving further, and then to Sunil and Jaspal. Vijay, you are there?
Yeah, Deepak. So firstly, I think there was one question regarding on mining. So what I can tell you that if you can identify your data models beforehand and run streaming jobs, it will solve that computational problems, okay, that which you're facing. At the last moment, you cannot run operations, data mining operations on the entire set of data. Another thing which I say, the ongoing trend for the network security is we need not see only those services like the traditional resources of VMs or the compute devices only. So network security has to be built to other services like storage services, like most of the hacks which we have seen that they've happened on open S3 buckets or Azure blobs. So the network security controls have to be built onto the various services, both infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service there as well. So those things need not be neglected as we're moving more towards the cloud.
Great, great. Sunil, your thoughts?
Yeah, just wanted to finish by saying that, and this is a message to all enterprise organizations, please don't treat security as a cost. Because if your network or your data gets compromised, then the damage that it can cost your brand and your image will take a long time to kind of build that trust back into customers. So please don't treat it as an additional cost. It's a must-have today. It's not a nice to have. It is a must-have, and obviously you need to have, defense in depth, and make sure that you address security at multiple layers. That's what I just want to call out to the enterprises.
Sunil, can I borrow and further make that point more elaborated? Please don't treat cloud as to mitigate risk to minimize the ROI. Thinking moving to cloud is saving, mitigating the larger things, securing it in a better way as well, the way we have seen that. But thank you for bringing that up. We are talking, even Government of India saying a lot related to budget to be on security, and thankful to the Government of India thinking that way. Jaspal, your closing remarks and something for the audience.
Yes, so I think what Deepak you said and what Sunil mentioned nicely leads to what I was about to say, which is with more of transition and adaption of cloud, I think it's very easy for firms to lose sight of where their crown jewels are. And let's go back to basics. And if the enterprises don't keep track of where their crown jewels are and where is the infrastructure and where is the points of compromise, somebody else will find it for you. And that you will learn through a very hard way, trying to recover or restore from a security breach and an incident. So, I mean, at this point, I can't, emphasize more than ever before, the need for a regularly updated asset register, application repository, and the right risk classification, which brings into a perspective various business imperatives, not just from a security and a technical standpoint, but what does that asset mean from a revenue standpoint, from a reputation standpoint. And this also leads nicely to what Sunil was mentioning, the cost to do is not just to secure for the sake of securing, but it is to protect the brand, to ensure that the business continues operating without any disruptions, and there's no breach and there's no crisis situations from a cyber perspective. With that, I hand it back to you.
Thank you, Jaspal, for that summary. Without taking much time, being on 12:33 with 2 minutes to summarize what I learned, and as well as giving my perspective as a CISO for Microsoft as well. Traditionally, I would have few takeaways from the learning, and as well as to go back and put some points. One is, let's live in the arena of assume breach. Let's not think that we will be breached. Let's think that we are assume that you are in a breach condition. This was started with Vijay and Sunil as well, and then build on it. Let's also embrace technologies new rather than living the legacy, and get into something as a pilot and test and POCs to be on proactive side, then assuming something will happen. The SolarWinds type of situations are going to increase. So keeping those things in mind, we should have budgeted for everything, not to get out of the context that cloud first or cloud journey is not that what we are talking. Cloud has to be part of anybody's thing. And the last part to conclude is, let's not have security as bolt on. Like we all talked about convergence, integrated approach and all. The security has to be built in. Whether it is privacy by design or built in, like Jaspal mentioned, Sunil Vijay touched upon that, to have a single glass pane. With that, I am sincerely thankful to such a distinguished guest who gave different perspectives. Jaspal, thank you for bringing that entire industry perspective. The year will be closing in so many good things happening in India for PDP, a non-personal data protection bill, national cybersecurity strategy falling in place, blockchain guidelines, IoT consumer guidelines, and many plethora of things, including AI. It's going to be a tremendous year. Look for more network security clarity on behalf. Thank you, everyone, for joining in, giving the time and opportunity. Kavita, over to you if you finished on time, and inviting the next guest.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Talwar. And I would like to thank all the panelists of this session. It was very informative, and the discussion has certainly enabled to answer a lot of questions that people might have had. Now, I would like to welcome the panelists of the session on Unified Threat Management, Common Challenges and Best Practices. An adage in information security is that a company is only as secure as its weakest link. And I have the opportunity to invite all the panelists to come and discuss and share with us how companies can build their cybersecurity strategy. And I would like to welcome Mr. Pawan Desai and request him to moderate the panel. Before I do so, I would like to introduce him. Mr. Desai is industry's leading experts in cybersecurity, intelligence, and business resiliency. He's the Chief Executive Officer of MidCat Advisory. He has 2.5 decades of experience with leading global organizations with work spanning across Asia and Africa. A distinguished naval officer, Mr. Desai led information security and business continuity practice at one of India's leading companies before co-founding MidCat. Over to you, Mr. Desai. I would request you to set the tone and moderate the session.
Thanks a lot. I hope I'm audible and visible.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining. I think it's been wonderful listening to such eminent speakers as so diverse topic has been discussed since morning. I think all possible arenas of cybersecurity space has been covered. I think in great insights we have got since morning. So I would like to, start with a conclusion. So that we don't go haywire or the tone is set. So there are, as I think in the earlier speaker said, there are in the current context of this environment, in this world, only two sets of companies exist. One, who have been breached and they know they have been breached. And second, the companies who have been breached and they are not aware that they have been breached. I don't think there is any third set of companies exist. So let's start with that assumption. Then only we'll be able to solve or maybe able to tackle this mammoth problem of how to live in this current era of integration, of growth, digitalization. There's so many things which we are talking about, kind of thing. So we have to assume, we have to start that we have been breached, and how to solve the problem now is the way ahead, I feel. So that's why I wanted to start with a conclusion and then we go ahead. Just to get back to the topic of the day, what we are going to discuss is more on the UTM, which is Unified Threat Management. So Unified Threat Management Program, I think, or terminology, I believe, is one of the most mystified and ambiguous terminology in cybersecurity space. It's like that elephant which everybody sees it differently, they think about it differently, they define it differently. So I hope this panel and such eminent speakers we have in this panel, they will be able to decipher what it means and how do we go from here. Because if you talk to a service provider, you talk to OEM, if you talk to a product company, you talk to a small setup, you talk to bigger setups, they all define it very, very differently. So let's set the tone, set the understanding right, and see what problems does UTM solves for us and what it cannot do is very, very important to understand. And with this new concept of, I'll not say new concept of, with the new normal which is there when we go out of our environment, which we are not on-prem, where everybody's working from anywhere kind of an environment. How does the new normal in that context, how does the UTM ambit changes for us to protect it? And to last but not the least, I think very important is it's still a technology. It's still a technology or 4, 5, 6 different services which are integrating together and solving a problem. But how do we configure it? How do we optimally use it for a particular organization? And the people behind that will always remain a challenge. So these are certain things which I feel will start the discussion with, and I couldn't have asked for a better panel. I'll just introduce them very, very briefly. We have Mr. Deepak Maheshwari, needs no introduction. Currently, he's the public policy consultant and senior visiting fellow at ICRIER. It took me some time to decipher the full form of that. I hope I am going to do it right. It is Indian Council for Research on International Economic Relationship. So that's what he is currently. But I think he is prior to that, he has been well known in the industry. He has been with the Symantec and so many other setups which he has been very vocal in his views on the innovative technologies, how the whole maybe the interplay of research and technology, how is it going to play a big role in future of cybersecurity. Also, he is the alumni of IIT and has a degree in law. He gets invited from in global forums in cybersecurity and IT technology. Welcome, Mr. Maheshwari. Also, we have Mr. Sridhar. He's currently the Vice President, Cloud Security Services for Tata Communications. Again, come with almost 3 decades of experience, very well respected and sought out speakers. I think I've seen him in many different forums. Again, has a very clear and candid views on cybersecurity do's and don'ts. He currently manages the managed services business of cloud of hosting and security for Tata Communications. Has worked with companies like Dell, IBM, HCL. So he has seen security from many different sides, kind of thing. Also managed different geographies like India, US, Asia, including India. So he comes with a very different perspective of how the whole perspective of UTM and how the future looks like. And last but not the least, we have Viral Raul. He's the managing partner and chief strategy officer of DigiZen Consulting, almost 3 decades of experience. He advises CEOs and boards on digital transformation and how can you take opportunities, how can you use technology to leverage opportunities in the technology space. Has worked with companies like Gartner, Suzlon, Wipro, Zensar. So huge experience in terms of IT transformation and digitalization. So I think a great person to have on panel. I think I welcome all 3 of you on the panel. Just to set the context right, maybe I'll start with Mr. Maheshwari first. And just to set the context in that why and where does UTM make sense in the current context? Everybody has different way of defining it, but what is your view on that? That how do we go in that currently, and where does it fit in context of an organization? Mr. Maheshwari.
Thank you, Pawan, and thanks to CII and Tata Communications Center for Digital Transformation. So when we are looking at this whole thing around cybersecurity, one major thing that happened, and of course this has been something which has been talked right since in the morning the session started, is about work from home. So the moment we come to work from home type of scenario, people are using either corporate devices, including doing some personal work, personal devices using some official work, and at the same time, in almost all the cases, as my former colleague and friend Deepak also mentioned, that the connect actually happening through a personal network. So you have a home broadband connection or a mobile connection or anything like that. So at all these 3 instances, so the device, the service, and the connectivity, we have less control compared to what would have been in the office environment. And at the same time, the footprint is small. And you don't have any IT help desk to go physically there, ask those type of help and that type of support. So in these type of scenarios, it does make sense, a lot of sense, to go for something like unified threat management, because through a single solution, you are addressing multiple things. So it becomes almost like a fixed nice approach, where whatever type of things you want to do, almost, not everything, but almost, I'm saying, you can take out one of those tools and actually use it as and when it is needed. And because it is automated, it is not that you have to look for whether this particular screwdriver or this knife or something like that. It is selected automatically and it responds in a certain manner. Obviously, that means that there's a lot of standardization, there's a lot of automation, and collectively, there's a less management load on the end users. So end users feel more comfortable with that type of thing. They don't have to do too many things, too many different tools, too many different settings, and not just too many different settings and different tools. They could also be from different vendors, whereas this type of thing could be from a single vendor in that sense. So it becomes more manageable. Obviously, it will have some other type of challenges which we may come to a bit later.
Yes.
I just want to add one small thing, Pawan. In terms of the security scenario, and SolarWinds is something which was mentioned earlier also. So last week, I actually saw the press briefing by the Deputy National Security Advisor for Cyber in the US, Ann Newberg. And she mentioned something very interesting. She said 9 federal agencies, and most of those names are known. She also mentioned that 100 private sector entities, 12 of them are publicly known. So, and at least another 88, we don't know who those are. But she also mentioned something else, that more than 18,000 entities had actually downloaded that malicious update. So this is again something, if you can do through UTM, if you can do at least the detection, if not the response, at least the detection, and some other remedial actions could be taken in future. So let me stop here.
Okay, thanks. Actually, thanks for setting the context brilliantly. I think yes, if we configure it correctly, we can manage on its own. Let me go to Sridhar. I think now I think. How do you think service providers like yours and others are managing this expectation? Because every day the requirement is changing. Every day the new the threats are evolving. They are increasing in terms of their sophistication, in terms of the way everything is increasing, and then the expectation from clients is always that, yes, we have implemented UTM, now we should not have a problem. Everything should be hunky-dory and nothing should go wrong. How are you managing that kind of a scenario?
Yeah, thank you, Pawan, and good afternoon, everyone. See, first thing that we are trying to educate all customers on is anything is a shared responsibility. It's like saying that just because I have a security function in my organization, like how Deepak pointed out a while back, the router at home or the connectivity that I have here has absolutely no control from the centralized organization. So it obviously means that I have a responsibility in maintaining my infrastructure safe and secure to follow the certain guidelines as defined by the organization. So firstly, it's a shared responsibility. But interestingly, Gartner says that 99% of cybersecurity issues is the fault of the organization. So I'm not going to be so generous, and I'm not going to throw away that responsibility to someone. But the fact remains that the moment we started this COVID-related journey in India, nearly 84% of CIOs conveyed that they were concerned about cloud security. The reason is not far to seek, because enterprises have moved from simply securing the perimeter, because today identity is the perimeter. It's not bound by any device or any particular physical infrastructure. So they recognize the need to protect this growing digital infrastructure, which is global, it's elastic, it's dynamic, it's mobile, it's everywhere. So this means it brings with it increased risks. It brings an increasing attack surface, and hence an increasing complexity. And very, very few organizations are able to tackle this. And all the challenges which evolve with this from a cybersecurity program perspective. So partnering with people such as ourselves, what it does is first fills up the gaps in technology, second fills up the gaps in expertise, and we try and provide policies, procedures, and systems and processes that help to manage, mitigate, and respond to the threats in a fair manner. So we also support organizations in building scale in their approach, because we have the practice of having done that in various organizations. So I will probably deal with the challenges in 4 parts. Firstly, I think even the previous panel I just heard some of the speakers mention is about building the visibility across the digital estate.
So Sridhar, sorry, just cutting. We'll restrict, because it's a vast topic. So we'll restrict more to UTM and specific challenges. So that might be great. Otherwise,
absolutely.
Cloud is a favorite topic. I know that. So we can move.
Sure. No, visibility across the digital estate is very important, because the distributed IP systems brings a high load and high volume of false positives. So how are you able to get the integrated view of all these threats? And all the threats do not need the same level of response. So to be able to deploy the latest threat intelligence and bring the right quality and context, with newer tools with AI, ML, or even user entity behavior analytics to bring in the anomalous behavior understanding ahead of time and bring the right kind of managed detection and response is the first thing. So visibility is point number one. Second is moving from a reactive to a proactive approach to threat management. Because, for example, today you have MITRE ATT&CK. It's a framework that enables you to analyze, test, and enhance an organization's threat hunting and detection efforts. So simply adhering to some of these available frameworks and help organizations shorten the window of opportunity for an attacker and also stop them from coming back is one of the primary responsibilities for us. What it does is mastering the art of threat hunting enables both to address the threats as they occur and create intelligent hypothesis on what's on the horizon. So moving from reactive to proactive approach on threat management. The third one is the compliance challenge. Many regulatory entities, many compliance requirements, and many challenges associated with it. How does an organization plan and respond to this needs the support of the expertise in risk management and compliance, which a provider like us can bring to the table. We provide them also the right tools and technologies which enable the easy creation of reports that is required for these regulations. And lastly, the management of the complexity, which is very important because it impacts your mean time to detect and the mean time to respond. This requires the right set of threat intelligence vectors understanding and bringing the right framework and policies to be able to respond to them. So I'll put these 4 points in front, Pawan, and I'll stop.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. I think, I like your statement initially that 99% of the problem is about people. So you're only solving the 1% of the problem which you are trying to solve. So let me get the person who has actually the Gartner who says that. So we have Viral from erstwhile Gartner. So now you can always maybe say no, that is not correct, Viral. So let me bring you in now in this discussion and says, how do you see, how does the future of unified threat management looks like, and where are we going from here?
Thank you, Pawan. Yeah, it's great to be on this platform. And on the lighter note, let me start. Yes. Have you ever seen any astrologer in cybersecurity? You don't find, because it's very difficult to predict future, you know. So right. Because it's so diverse, it's so
we only have Gartner. We rely on Gartner.
No, but these are also not astrologers. They are just advisors. Yeah? Anyway, so the point is that UTM, I think what is important is to know where UTM came from. You know, earlier we had various devices which we just assemble, and then the CISOs were overwhelmed, the IT guys were overwhelmed about how to integrate all these devices and still get. And there were always some loose holes where security can be bypassed. And so UTM came out with a holistic approach. What I see that while I might not be able to predict the future, but I can echo the sentiments and expectations of the industry, which is like it will follow the same trend which is happening in applications. So, you know, you had these ERPs which were monolithic. Some ERPs are good in finance, but you still need to buy their HR package and then you have to live with it. Similarly, now what might happen is that there would be an assembly of all best practice products. So it would follow that microservices architecture where all self-contained modules, maybe from different vendors, can holistically, synergistically combine and give you a nice picture. You know, so that also means there would be consolidation of vendors. You can't just say that I have to do that. It will also reduce bandwidth of vendors because not everybody has to research everything. Whoever is doing good can assemble and it can come as a good package. Traditionally, you see Europe, the metros are working with multiple companies. You buy only one ticket. Same way, customer will buy tickets. He will take cloud services. And on the back end, there could be multiple vendors who are supporting that. That's one ecosystem change, which I wish it happens. And I'm sure that's where the direction is also moving. About the capabilities, I would say that UTM, the U will be replaced by S. So instead of unified, it will be more synchronous. So there will be a lot of synchronous activities which will happen. So what I mean by this is that yes, while right now we are proactively able to detect some things, what would be now coming up is some synchronous self-healing, which means combination with your SDN, so that if you find that there is a fraud which is happening, or if you detect that there is a least chance of even some attack to happen, it would immediately isolate that network, or it might disable some ID. and then without affecting the entire session of the network. So something which is intelligent, something which is self-healing will also play a major role, which means leverage of AI will come into picture. It will also mean that users will have little better control and better choice of what modules they should take, what they should not take. Because in unified, one major disadvantage was that once everything is unified, you have little control onto managing some aspect of it. Now that modularity will also would be playing a major role. I think that's my
great points. I think
humble opinion about it.
Excellent. I think well, thanks a lot for that. I think yes, it looks like I think the UTM is a godsend thing. But let me bring get Mr. Maheshwari back. Yes, a lot of good things have been spoken about UTM. It will solve a lot of problems, and it's, as you said, manages on its own kind of thing. But what are the pitfalls of UTM? Would you like to share your views on that, and where do we need to solve the challenges and the problems which UTM might create for us on that? Mr. Maheshwari?
One, you may recall a few months back, we were all at another CII panel on cybersecurity, where I had said that BYOD is giving way to CYOD. So bring your own device is actually giving way to create your own disaster. Yes. But I would say that UTM on one hand could also do one more CYOD, which is create your own defense. Okay. But in this whole journey of creating your own defense, one of the major challenges with UTM is that number one, it becomes a single point of failure. So in case there are any malicious updates, for example, as we mentioned earlier, or for that matter, more often than not, maybe a lack of updates, okay, due to bandwidth, due to connectivity challenges, or just lethargy, or poor configuration, this whole thing can come to a knot. Okay, so it can actually become totally ineffective. That's one major challenge because it's a single point of failure. Second challenge is because with UTM, typically you will, in terms of the costing, you would pay for the same per user or per device or whatever manner. Okay, now whereas the risks might actually be different at different levels. And that could be a hindrance in terms of the investment in UTM itself. Third challenge is because of the legacy equipment and commitments and subscriptions and annual contracts and other things that people already have those investments. So how do you sort of get rid of that while you are making a new investment here? So that's another big challenge. But ultimately, I would say the biggest challenge is in terms of relying totally only on UTM. So I would say UTM is good, but it's not always good enough. Now, for that good enough, people will always have to have some specific solutions which go over and above what the baseline UTM itself does. And I always give a simile or analogy from the health sector. So again, in terms of the healthcare, you may have different type of specialists or even super specialists when you go to a hospital. But for a long-term well-being and for a general care, what you do need is a good, reliable family doctor, as used to be the case earlier, or for example, a good physician who knows internal medicine in and out, and who takes care of the basic stuff. As and when something goes very critical, let's say there's a cardiac problem, there's something related to bones or something like that, that physician in turn should be able to leverage others in the ecosystem with specific expertise at those point solutions or point challenges. And those specific solutions will come with few people, but most of the people, the general physician, and for most of the other times, the general physician himself or herself would suffice in terms of the general well-being and taking care. So let me stop here.
Great point. I think yes. Thanks a lot for laying out those challenging, very practical challenges and very categorically what you laid out. I think let me go back to Sridhar here. So as Viral mentions, it is sort of creating an ecosystem of vendors on the back end, which is happening, which is actually the power of this. But do you see going ahead, there is a need of greater collaboration, not only about the service provided, but even if you say even the governmental agencies, the end users who are there, because the same problem is like one malicious code, and this problem will be there with most of the companies. So how do you tackle those kind of challenges? So learning from one organization getting used by other organization, because the information sharing is still a still considered a taboo, or it is still not done because of various reasons. So how do you see the programs like these can help in solving those things, and which agencies do you see apart from the vendors and the backend should get more involved to make best use of the programs like these?
Sure. Thanks for that, Pawan. I think the short answer to the question is there a possibility for larger collaboration? The short answer is yes, because no one organization can outthink the combined power of the industry by any stretch of imagination. And there is so much happening out there. And we've got to realize that the cyber criminals and the people who are waiting to pounce on the biggest vulnerability or the smallest vulnerability that you create, they are increasingly using sophisticated methods. And I read somewhere that a ransomware attack takes about 1 hour and 58 minutes to reach you. That's it. That's about the window of time that you have to react. So how are you going to build your defense? And just if you want me to stretch some more acronyms and an interpretation, there's a different BYOD which I'm thinking of. It's about build your orchestrated defense. How you orchestrate your defense with the right kind of methods and with all the intelligence that you can bring in from the threat vectors is very, very important for any organization, because the cybersecurity experts and service providers such as ourselves, we face the ongoing challenge to just keep up with the cyber criminals, because many a time things happen, and by the time you get to know, the attack has already happened. So increasingly, new vulnerabilities are being exploited, newer attack vectors are being identified. So the industry and the service providers proactively must find some mechanism to share threat intelligence. And I can take some examples. In India, government agencies such as CERT-in or NCIIPC, regulatory bodies, industry regulators like RBI, for example, from a banking perspective, are playing a very, very active role. Now, how much, how far? Yeah, we can keep debating that. But there are forums that are being created. CERT-in, for example, constantly calls industry players such as ourselves, and we are engaged. And RBI sends regulatory guidances to banks and all the regulated entities on a routine basis. So there is some crucial threat intelligence and advisory that is being shared. But a word of caution: there are about 400 advisories that were shared in the first 45 days of lockdown. Who has got the time to be able to just put this mind to matter and understand all these things and be able to build the response? Now, if these were orchestrated, if these were all combined together, and if it were shared in a better and a more organized manner, that would have been extremely helpful. Next is, I also find that there are lots of non-profit organizations like VirusTotal, or even educational institutions like Cambridge University, community-driven institutions. Many of them are beginning to share threat intelligence feeds. They are compiling them. They're putting these elements together and sharing them in the public domain. So these are very, very good. Some commercial entities are now beginning to share some of these kind of threat intelligence reports. For example, we share with all our customers on a weekly basis threat advisories. It helps the customer be aware of what is going on around them. And there are some examples of even commercial entities participating with government agencies, non-profit organizations getting in. So I think the community must get a little proactive about this, and we probably must create some of these forums where this cross-pollination of information only strengthens all of us together as a community. I'll stop here.
Oh, thanks a lot. I think it's a high time that community builds up and start showing results. I think we have been talking about building of this community for many, many years now. I think this is the time where the results starts coming in. I'll take one question back to, I think, Mr. Maheshwari. UTM, whenever we talk about it, is usually talked about it is for smaller companies or medium-sized companies. Bigger company needs a very dedicated, separate services kind of a thing. UTM is not the solution for maybe large organizations. It is more for medium and small, which cannot afford different products, or this thing is there. What are your views on that? Is it a fallacy? Is it there is some truth in that, or what do you think of that?
I think even that is changing now, because look at it this way: even a large organization today, in the scenario of so earlier people used to talk about the federated architecture within the organization, but today you actually have a federated teams working from their hometowns, from their homes, and maybe small offices and co-working spaces all over. So that way, if you see, on one hand, yes, at an aggregate level, yes, a large organization may look very different. But in terms of actual working, if I'm working from home, and even if I belong to a large organization, it is still almost like a quasi MSME type of operation, as far as I am concerned. It could be a micro enterprise scenario at that level. So I would say that even for large organizations, UTM does make sense, as I said earlier, at least at some level. And for things like bring your own devices, etc., where perhaps the companies could also think about being more creative. So if individuals have to buy different type of security solutions, that may have a different cost and they may not know how to operate it. But suppose the companies might say that, okay, you can use your personal device for official purpose, but you have to install this particular UTM solution in that device. So I think increasingly we'll look at these type of hybrid approaches even in large organizations, and not just in the MSME or in a micro enterprise.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thank you for that view. Yes, I think we have spoken a lot about, I think, the benefits, the pitfalls, so many different things have come out on that. Let me get back to Viral on that. So where are we discussing or the people aspect of the whole UTM? Yes, it's as good as the person who is going to configure, who is going to integrate solution, because we have seen in many cases, I think most of the cases where we see the millions of dollars gets spent in buying the equipment, but those small tweaks or the person who is implementing is not good enough. So then everybody blames that, yes, so moon was promised, but it is not solving the problem. So where does the person, and is a huge shortage of skill set, because it needs such a diverse understanding of a threat landscape as well as expertise on implementation side. So what do you see the bigger challenges here, and what do you like? What are your views on that?
Yeah, Pawan, I think people would form the most integrated part of any information security program, for many reasons. One is, traditionally, 3 pillars are people, processes, and technology. Second thing is, people can be the weakest link, or they can be the strongest glue, which will give you a holistic chain. And the third thing is, people will always remain the information creators, information manipulators, information transmitters, and information destroyers. So we don't call them assets, but yeah, they are still there. And then we need to take care. Traditionally, it was told that in a manufacturing organization, when you go out, they will frisk your pockets and they will check your car boots, but they don't frisk your forehead. So data still goes out. Okay, there's no way to prevent all these things. Now, coming back to this topic of the skills, I think the root cause of that skill deficit is not to blindly go towards a technical expertise. I think all tools need what is called risk awareness. So I see a big shift for if you have more people who are risk aware, who are business aligned, who know what actually needs protection and which action to be taken. I think that would be a major thing. From a CISO's perspective, the traditional stance was that FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. Now that has to get into a mode of let's now solve. So earlier, business will always think that CISO is the roadblock. Now what CISOs will say that not all risk is bad. You can take risk. I am there to give you compensating control. So that ensures that you are taking risks and at the same time you are moving further. So that data ownership, what I call risk ownership, will play a major role. So when earlier what used to happen, if the whole burden is on IT or information security, they'll keep on protecting without knowing what they are protecting. But now if you have a risk owner who is from business, who knows what is the consequence of some loss, then he will partner with, he or she will partner with the IT or InfoSec team and work something which is much better. So then there is some amount of burden sharing is what I say. And then the relationships will change. Relationship will not remain a customer vendor. They will become more of a business partner. That's what it is happening. And as I mentioned earlier, cross-functional teams will happen in corporate as well. Based on the incident, a self-creating team will be formed, which will have legal, HR, admin, IT, all combined together to tackle that issues. So how do you manage that framework of incident response? So as someone very rightly said, 100% security is a myth. Everybody must develop that ability to recover faster and prevent same occurrence again. That's the only point. And how do you minimize your damage is more important. So if you are able to ensure that what is the most vital, and am I protecting properly? Am I ensuring that my most critical data is protected and all other things have a very, very adaptive approach? Then it will make a lot of sense. So I give my 10 cents to upskilling with risk awareness is the main point rather than worrying about the technical expertise. Many times what happens, you leave everything to the technical guy and he implements and he does. But he doesn't know which information loss is going to cause what problem, what impact to business. And that's where the typical problem starts.
Excellent.
That's
thanks. Very passionate view on that. Thanks a lot. We have last 5 minutes, so maybe summing up from all three speakers, 30 seconds each. Future and what we need to worry about, starting with Mr. Maheshwari. 30 seconds.
I would say that we should look at more from outcome basis. So I think increasingly what will happen is that people, instead of just paying straight away, okay, that these are the services or these are the solutions, this is what we are paying. I think part of the payment will happen upfront or an ongoing basis. Part of the payment might be linked to more to the outcomes. And second thing which we might see is when the cyber insurance is also coming more into the perhaps those companies who are underwriting these type of risks in terms of cyber risks, they might also find it one easy way to look at something like UTM deployment and that type of strategy compared to many other things which may be much more complex, especially for smaller businesses. This might be a big boost in terms of going for cyber insurance. And the last thing that I want to say is that it has been mentioned earlier about national cybersecurity strategy, data protection legislation, etc. All of those things may happen here or there. But the fact is that the cyber criminals actually cooperate and do information exchange in a much more open and I mean, in a rather secure, but more openly than the others who need that type of protection. So what we do need is we need new incentives for people to be in sharing this type of threat information more openly and without seeing the liabilities in a big manner there. So that's where I would like to stop. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Excellent insights. Sridhar?
Yeah, sure. So first thing is strengthen the threat intel sources and be able to build a proactive management, proactive response and mitigation strategies for that. Second is build visibility of all that is happening across the infrastructure so that you're able to understand the vulnerabilities and respond to them. Visibility, build the right governance and have the right compliance model. And third and most important, it's a shared responsibility. Every single person contributes to it. You've got multiple instances from the cloud. You've got SaaS applications being utilized from somewhere. You've got identity that allows somebody to access your infrastructure. The concept of trust and verify is gone. There is zero trust. So work on the identity, the device, the data, all put together. It's a shared responsibility across the board. So these are 3 points from my side, Pawan.
Thanks a lot. Viral?
Yeah, I would again say that risk management is and will remain the core of a cybersecurity program. And so more and more people will have to look at all 3 aspects of risk management, which is mitigation, acceptance, and transfer. So we see a big evolution. In addition to the network firewalls, there would be legal firewalls, contractual firewalls, and financial firewalls. They will also play a major role. And obviously, as everyone has already told, we sum it up that information security is not just the job of InfoSec team. It's a business problem. It will have to be tackled by business.
Great. I think thanks a lot. I'll just take 60 seconds just to sum it up. I think great insights. Learned so many new words today, actually. On that, I think let's see all the 3 panels. I think, yes, the 5th eye approach, critical. The UTM ultimately has to lead to it, to manage on its own, learn from ourselves. Security is going to be a shared responsibility. I think it has been emphasized a number of times, and it will continue. I think we have. It's like we have to live with this. We have to, which is there. I like the Sridhar, what he said. The 4 pillars of that: the visibility, the proactiveness, the compliance, and the managing the complexity. Because the new problem might be very different than what we have seen in the past. So let's not prepare for the last battle, the new war will be very, very different. So we have to feel that consolidation is happening at a vendor level, but a larger community participation is required. So I like the concept Viral said, replace U with S. So it has to be synchronized self-healing and self-creation of team when the problem happens. Every problem will need different kind of teams and different kind of self-healing mechanism. And yes, BYOD has to move to CYOD, not creating your own disaster, but to creating your own defense. That's the ultimate. And ultimate, I think the advice to the CISOs: don't remain in FUD state, which is the fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which most of the CISOs are in the current phase. I think they have to move out and face the problem. The problem is not going away, but we have to collectively solve this problem. It is everybody's battle, and we will lose someday, we will win someday, but collectively we'll win most of the days. So I think that is where I would like to end the panel. I think we are exactly dot at 1:15, which was the given time to us. Thanks a lot, all the three panelists. Great insights. We can take questions if we have time, Kavita, or we can answer on the chat box.
Yes, we have a few minutes. We can take questions.
Yes, anybody has. So there is one question which I saw, how SD-WAN differs from traditional router and is it secured? Anybody wants to take that question?
Yeah, I can take that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, SD-WAN essentially ends up stretching your organization's wide area infrastructure across a larger surface, but obviously it will increase the attack surface. By definition, it does not include security because it's first a software-defined concept, but there are enough tools available and it is possible to make it completely secure in the way it is being designed. So you need to think about it right from the design stage and conceptual stage itself. So it's possible we do that for a lot of customers.
Okay, thanks a lot. Any other question, Kavita?
We still have a minute to go. In case any of the panelists would like to ask any question, we can take it on. Otherwise, the next session, the panelists are all here. We could begin with the next session on cloud security, as you say.
Great. I don't see any other question on the chat box. I'd like to conclude the session. I think thanks a lot to Shwari, Sridhar, and Viral for excellent views. Thanks CII and CPT for organizing it. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all the panelists of the session. It was once again a very wonderful and informative session with a lot of abbreviations coming in, and I think we'll all like to keep all of that. And the session is being recorded and we will play it back for future reference. I'm happy to welcome the panelists of the next session on cloud security, evolving trends. No conference on cybersecurity is complete without a discussion on cloud security. So we have a very eminent panel once again, which is led by Mr. Lalit Kumar, Lead India Security Function of Amazon Internet Service Private Limited. I would like to introduce him. He's been working with AWS since 2014. And he works with the customers to improve their security risk and compliance in cloud. During his tenure, he has worked on many large-scale distributed systems. Over to you, Mr. Lalit, and I would like to request you to set the tone and start the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We do have with us in our panel today, we have Mr. Rohit Srivastava from Dell. Sorry, Rohit is a virtual CISO. My apologies. Rohit is virtual CISO. And I was intrigued by this. So he authors a lot of things and is an evangelist on cybersecurity. We have Mr. Ripu Bajwa, Director and General Manager, Data Protection Solutions at Dell. We also have Mr. Kunal Pandey, working at KPMG. And we have Mr. Avinash Prasad, who's VP. While I was reading through and I was listening to a lot of discussion around security, what came across is that solutions, the various solutions being discussed, and solutions are seductive in nature. We tend to gravitate more towards solutions rather than re-looking at the problem. And probably we are looking at problems from the same lens, probably in the cloud, since the architectures are changing very rapidly. There's a lot of innovation happening. We have to relook at the problems from a different lens. We have to again bring our focus back to the problem. Someone at the end of the last panel discussion, it was being said that we have to understand what is the risk we are operating with. So I think that's the key here. So with this, I would like to invite all the panelists. My first question is actually to everyone. How do you think, how do we bring our focus back to the problem rather than thinking about solution? You have seen a lot of migration happening to cloud recently, post-COVID world. Then what is one advice that you will offer organization that they should relook at problem? One of the problem, let me throw that, is employees are going to work or people are going to work from their home. They're going to bring different devices. Network boundaries no longer be trusted. They are being broken. So how would you advise different organization, what kind of a security solutions they should look at and how they should redefine that problem? So I'll open this question. Probably Rohit, you'd like to take this. You'll take a lead on this, and then we'll move to other panelists.
Okay, thanks, Lalit. And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us here. And pretty interesting topic. And been listening to all the eminent speaker before this. One thing which points out at a very beginning for all of these is the core of knowledge, the education, the knowledge, the awareness. And I always coin that term that knowledge is the first line of defense. If we know what we are dealing with, if we know how to use it, if we know how to deploy it, implement it, we are actually living in a secure world. Otherwise, the attackers are going to know it. And they do take a lot of effort to know new technology, learn new technologies so that how they can bypass them. So even with cloud, with other stuff, and not to say, but thanks to COVID, a lot of people got a lot of chance to revise on a lot of studies. They did a lot of certification. The LinkedIn was flooded with certifications every now and then. So people got chance to rebrush their skills, and the knowledge they have acquired will actually be helping them. It's all required that which direction are they learning. With cloud adoption, people would love to take their apps to the cloud, their infra to the cloud. But if the developers are not studying how to develop that application properly, and security is given as an afterthought that, okay, someday my security will come and say, oh, without the VAPT, the application cannot go live. Then I have the time limit and I'll ask someone to quickly do the VAPT of the application, the typical terms in the industry. We're going to still have this fight. If you want to do the solution at the base core level, the idea is that we should go ahead with knowledge first, awareness first. Love it.
Okay, awesome. So awareness, we talk a lot about it, and a lot of organizations arrange training for their employees. But the reality to be discussed is most of the time these are the question-based or a curriculum where employees just pass. Let's be honest about it. Now, how do we inculcate culture of security? And we'll start with you and then move to other panelists. Are there mechanism, Rohit, you have figured out that you could inculcate within your team how to build a culture of security?
Culture of security, if I'm asked, one of the important aspects is do not give the training like kids, and do not give them the security awareness like they're kids. They're all grown up. Let them understand the right problem, give them the direction, and everybody is willing to take the right path. The only problem with the traditional education which is going on in the whole cybersecurity is a boring slide deck coming up, people standing in front of it, just next, something, and the same preaching is happening everywhere. We're not treating grown-ups. Let's start teaching them as grown-ups, giving them the benefit they can achieve out of learning that particular topic, and you will see the changes. We have done that in past. We have seen those kind of changes happening where the developers and other people started knowing the problem and started fixing it before the problem becomes big. Although it will hamper others in the cybersecurity industry, that the business might go a little down, but I'm happy that way because the things are more secure in an inherent manner.
Okay, just one direction I want to add here is when we say building a culture of security, One is, of course, awareness and more trainings. Apart from this, as a CISO, are you setting up certain parameters? Are you setting up measurement around security? For example, how many resources I have which are vulnerable, which are not patched, or which all resources are accessible from outside of my network? Are you defining a framework around, like these? Are you putting metric, and is there a mechanism to measure?
So one quick thing, not a CISO, but I am actually doing a lot of virtual CISO. So get to do the CISO work in multiple organizations at multiple locations and variety of industries. And that's where which we have seen that measurement is one of the most important aspect. And especially when you are gonna take money from the CFO's pocket, he's gonna ask you what happened to that money. And if you have a quantifiable mechanism, there is a very good chance that the company who is spending money is happy spending that. Security is always considered as a cost center. Let's start showing them that the cost which are spent, what is the significant mathematical number change. Like for one of our clients, what we did is initially before signing up, we did a benchmarking on the multiple standards. We created an algorithm of our own to do a benchmarking based on NIST, your CIS benchmarks and other stuff, gave them a score, and then took them through the whole security transformation journey. By the end of the journey, the way the score were improved, at least some tangible benefit is visible to the customers. Otherwise, आज तक hack नहीं हुआ, अब क्या hack होगा? Is a typical answer coming in from a CEO or a CFO. All news and other stuff is that, oh, this is good to hear, but are we still in a position to pay, or should we still spend out? Measurement will become the easy, comfortable situation where they can say that, okay, we have spent money and this is where we are getting results.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is apply more standards. You talk about NIST, you talk about CIS. So follow those standards and make sure those are applied. Thanks. I will move on to our next panelist, Mr. Avinash Prasad. Avinash, would you like to share your views on this?
Well covered and very interesting. Lalit, any specific area you would want me to go on? What would be
around how to build a culture of security. And I would like to add one more dimension to this is now as we see a lot of migration happening, and there is a change of platform. People have been operating out of data centers and now they're migrating to cloud. So now one is, of course, how to change that culture, because there has been a centralized team managing firewalls and other devices. Now security becomes everyone's responsibility. In the new era of cloud, where there's a shared responsibility. So how do you think from a migration standpoint, and also how you will emphasis on building a culture of security?
True. So, both of these are interesting topics, and one can examine it from perspectives and lenses. The way I would like to look at, firstly, talking about security, it's about engagement, right? The culture of security or thinking about security. Given that there's ownership, there's the nuance of responsibility, and everybody is responsible. But the fact is that, shared responsibility is all great, but sometimes shared responsibility means no one's responsibility. And the ball is left in the center of the field, and everybody's waiting who's going to kick it next. So the notion of where security as an enabler in the proactive organizations, where I see, it really more is being the go-to agency that can help solve problems for business, for technology groups, and for others. Not a compliance group which is there to kind of come in with a checklist and ask for, okay, tick this box, or tell me whether you've done this or not. That's important from a process, rigor of the process standpoint, that yes, I'll do my security design reviews, I'll do my VAPT around security infrastructure to know whether you're secure and all of that or not. Sure, there's a certain level of hygiene which is needed. But more importantly is the thinking around, is there an enablement of the business that can be done the way you would, any technology or business group would approach, let's say, sales. because they want their products to reach the market. They would approach marketing because they want the products to be presented well, the offering to be presented well, let us say, and to be accepted and consumed. Similarly, can security be an enabler like that? How do we make that happen? That by bringing out the notion and the nuance of, for example, I know that Rohit has spoken written a lot about privacy, etc. Right? But notion of privacy get inculcated into the thinking of technology people or other IT teams or even business teams, that what they are dealing with is finally data, and data is something that anybody can assert their right on at any point of time, given the nuance of PII, etc. And therefore, what you're doing needs to always be, you need to be mindful of that. So can they take that advice? Can the technology groups and business groups take advice from security on that? Is that going to be an enabler? Is there some other feature that that if they blend in that level of security, that level of monitoring, that gives an assurance that that product is more secure, and therefore it will get bought. So that is where I see that businesses start thinking differently about security, moving away from a toll gate based thinking that this is a toll gate, I need to pay my toll, I need to complete the checklist, and then I move on, and then I'm free on the highway and I do what I want. From there, shifting towards this thinking of this is an enabler, and I need to be taking advice and calling the groups which are the security evangelists or the solutions leads within the organization, give the guidance around assurance, give the guidance around as privacy, all these things which surround the success of any product or any technology deployment. So that's one. I think it helps facilitate this more and present some kind of a change in the erstwhile approach. The second one is definitely the thinking around this cloud and shared security responsibility, the other aspect that you brought out, right? So this notion has been there, but it's interesting. Interestingly, it's also been evolving. That from a shared responsibility nuance perspective, now let us say most of the technology functions can be cloudified. Compute for sure, applications for sure, network for sure. So it's primarily then it's only the data that is something that is something that you want to put boundaries the rights around, and if that data is truly of value. So as the boundaries have otherwise changed, the endpoint also could be anything accessing anything from the cloud. Endpoint could be again not company owned, not company managed either. So the thinking around the shared responsibility has to really now get much more sharply modeled around what is getting cloudified, these different layers of infra, of compute, OS, applications, other supporting layers versus your data. And therefore the thinking from the enterprise standpoint should come top down, thinking about what happens to my data now today is every stage is possibly shared infrastructure that is being traversed. The infrastructure could be cloud, and therefore it is shared infrastructure. The network could be like that. Application could be a SaaS application, etc. So I think that's where the shared responsibility thinking now needs to get much more sharper tuned, and the rest of it should be around rigorous examination and assurance. Is this meeting my requirement? Is this meeting my business requirement? But maybe it may not be your direct responsibility. You get that as part of the service. You get that as part of a managed services contract. So I think that's where the modeling needs to focus on what's really yours versus what's part of the broader infrastructure in this cloudified world, and then flow down from there, where exercising controls versus monitoring and looking at performance governance of what security controls are being provided to you as part of the environment and the security service contract. That's what I would say. I'll back to you.
So what I'm hearing is that two important points I got from this is one is, of course, the data security, the privacy. Second important point which you are pointing in the direction is controls. What control works for a particular organization? I want to take this next question to Kunal. Kunal, you have seen various migration and you have seen controls, native controls available with cloud provider. Now, how do we decide whether what additional controls are required, or should organization continue only with the native control, and at what stage they have to look for alternative solution? is there a framework, like, would you like to refer to maybe an intrusion kill chain or MITRE? Is there such framework that you refer while doing a migration project on deciding the controls?
Sure. Thanks, Lalit, and greetings to all the panelists. Happy to be here in this session. I think your question around how controls should be looked at when one is looking at migration. I think in my mind, the first and foremost thing is one has to be clear on what is one trying to achieve. And in that sense, I would put out a few points. One is, of course, data, so which is clearly the asset which one is trying to achieve, protect. The second is about the various user groups. And today, one is by design trying to make the setup more and more open and participative, where not just the customers but the partners are being given access, so that a very seamless experience can be provided to all the users, essentially the customers. From my hat of looking at digital risk and the cybersecurity, I would therefore say that data and who are these users, they have to be very clearly understood and identified, and then seeing how the security can be built in. And that there again, majority of the organizations, other than organizations who can claim that they started their journey purely cloud native, right, which are the new age organizations, fintechs. A lot of organizations have a mixed environment, that where a lot of stuff is there in their data centers or in their third-party data centers, which may not be cloud enabled, and then they are also using for certain things cloud setup. So there is a hybrid environment. One has to look at what is the construct of that hybrid environment, and then see what can be done in terms of the controls. So one can of course use MITRE as the standard, or one can also look at other aspects, like you can look at NIST framework. But I think when we look at cloud, the very fundamental elements on cloud is that one has to understand how is one using it. Is it at an infrastructure or a platform level? Is it at a application level? Who are the users? As I said earlier, what is your entire development life cycle? Because the moment you go into cloud, one of the things which one is of course trying to do is to become more agile. And when you say more agile, you're also bringing in the concepts of DevSecOps, etc., so that you can offer services to your customers in a much faster manner. So how do you take care of the entire life cycle, and then look at what are the controls? So of course there are cloud native bits which can be looked at, but the very important point, I will probably give one example here to explain my thinking. Now, if let us say I am supposed to ride a bicycle, right? It's very simple, and you don't need to understand much. You can simply pick up a bicycle. Of course, you need to know how to balance, but you can ride. If from there I need to drive a car, I need to know a little bit more. I need to know which are those various levers which I have to work on. And if I have to fly a plane, I better know what are the various levers the plane has. And if I don't switch on all the things which are required, then when the plane doesn't fly the way I want to fly it, it's the challenge at my end. I think that's one of the big challenge which I feel is there in this hybrid cloud enabled environment, where one is trying to apply a fast, and a straight jacket capability, without looking at what is that one wants to build, what are the options available in cloud. Many systems, it's like a menu card. What do you want to have, right? So what are you basically sourcing in? How is it fitting into your environment, which is a potentially hybrid environment where a lot of partners are coming in? How are you keeping very razor sharp eye on the core of it, with your data, and who are the people who are going to be accessing it? And I will extend the people to even machines. Today, a lot of access is through code and machines. So how is the code and machines accessing it? And then designing a control around it, to address the issues. So of course, yes, the framework can be used, but I think a very systematic but a thorough exercise to understand what you want to achieve is very important, because we have seen in our experience, that when that is not done, things remain unplugged with a false belief that things have been done. So that's what I would like to say. I also wanted to add maybe a little bit, Lalit, if you allow me, on your other question about the awareness side. So I'll again start with a couple of literal examples, and I use this word AAA, and in my definition, the AAA is awareness, alertness, and action. Now, if I ask people, how many of people are aware about cybersecurity, I think a lot of hands will go up. How many people are alert, where they don't, get fall prey into at their own level, or they know what has to be done at the right time in the organization? Some hands will not go up. How many people really act on it? A lot of hands will not go up, right? So there's a whole concept of AA, and there, a lot of it boils down to the culture and importance. Again, being from Mumbai, I will give an example that if I am driving my car in Marine Drive, I don't cut lanes, because I know there is a cop out there and he or she is going to catch me and put a fine on me. But if I am driving on Western Express Highway, I easily cut lanes. Right? There is no, and if I am, let's say, driving on a non-highway road in the suburb, you will also find people riding on the other direction. Right? So a lot depends on what importance we are giving. And 10 years back, I was with the CIO of a very large bank, and he asked me, Kunal, can you tell me how many people are, there is a consequence if people share passwords. So the tone on the top is, I think, very, very important on how important we are making, the entire element of security. And to do that, I think communication and consistent communication in business language is very important from a CISO perspective. Are we able to articulate to the CEO and the board members what is the real risk from a cybersecurity for their business? Maybe they're going to lose customers, maybe they're going to go on the wrong side of the regulations, maybe they're going to lose a lot of money. What is that? Is the issue that has to be looked at. It has to be then made important, and also one has to play on the psychology of the individual. How do you make it important? So for example, if I let's say if somebody who is not clearing a cyber awareness test after a session, right, is asked to train 10 people in his department, right, then it becomes a more difficult thing to handle, because it plays on the psychology also, and if somebody is not giving attention on that training and just letting the time by and close the training, he or she knows that the consequence will not be right, because he doesn't want to be the person who is not giving importance to this important element. So AAA, as I started with, and giving the right importance and simplifying the entire message is, I think, very important when it comes to the awareness side of it. Yeah, so I'll take a pause and hand it over back.
Thanks, Kunal. So a lot of things I picked up from this. The first one is you gave an analogy of riding a bicycle and driving a car and flying a plane. In all three situations, what remains common is the basic security. You don't want to fall off from anywhere. And now our organization have complex structure. Enterprise have way more complex structure. Now, I think, and you answered it with the risk, that what is the risk that you're running and what is your top risk? The translation of those risks into security control could be their minimal set of controls and a decision matrix, whether the cloud natively provides that, or do I need another solution for this problem? And if cloud covers partly, what is the residual risk I'm running with? I think that's what you give. And you talked about, and I think data is something that you also talked about. So with this, I want to go to Ripu. Ripu, on the data, since you lead the data protection solution at Dell, outside encryption and the native controls that cloud provide, what additional control do you recommend, Ripu, for organization to consider around data security? Keeping in mind lots of ransomware attack got a lot of press this year, and it's not going to stop. It will remain. So what you suggest, Ripu, what's your strategy around it?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lalit, for having me and esteemed participants for your valuable insights. With regard to Lalit specifically, we are seeing a lot happening in these verticals in the industry. Last year has been a spate of incidents across various verticals, various industries have been impacted, and we've been in the thick of many of these, helping customers come out saving their data. So what we have observed is, as infrastructure players, believe security has to be something like has to be as part of your evolution in terms of structure elements that you have deployed.
Ripu, sorry, your voice is not coming very clearly.
Okay.
Yep.
Am I clear now?
Much better.
All right. Okay, if I can repeat, what we are seeing is in the last 1 year, there has been a spate of incidents, and having helped many of our key customers come out of this, there's been a lot of learning. And if you really see from an infrastructure standpoint, what we believe is a very intrinsic security has to be very intrinsic. It has to be evolving. I heard from the esteemed panelists, yes, being aware and alert and action, absolutely very, very key. And to that effect, when we talk about technology, people, processes, all of this, and under the frameworks that we are also governing security, the new form in which we have seen in the last 1 year, a lot of disruption has happened. People have been forced to move their working environments. It's now work from anywhere. It's going to remain like that. And in the process, what we have seen is the transformational piece, the digital and the security transformation has been accelerated, which means organizations have started keeping security at the topmost now. Even when you're building an application and associated infrastructure, being network, storage, servers, you'd have to consider where and how people are going to be using the applications. Simple example remains people are accessing key applications on any kind of endpoint. And endpoints are going to be the places where there will be a lot of compute, there will be a lot of vulnerability, which just brings in the fact that as we evolve into the future, which is coming at us much faster, security will be paramount. Today, it's all about securing firewalls or making sure that your data is encrypted as people are using it, be it flowing from edge to core to cloud. But now, with the new aspect of cyber, there is increased amount of emphasis being seen into recovery, which is the last pillar of NIST framework. I'm sure all the panelists here would agree that there are multiple solutions in the security domain. But having given the fact that should there be an incident, what is the organization going to do about it? How are the people going to deal with ransom? How are people going to come out of that particular day after? So testing your recoveries, even though we are seeing the regulatory framework taking a pretty strict now role as far as cyber incidents are concerned, be it in the government, be it in the private organizations, we will face that need that it is important to be prepared for that last line of defense. What if I am under a kind of incident? How do I recover? How do I show fastest recovery for my most sensitive data so that I don't have to pay ransom? I don't have to be compromising on my brand equity. And there are solutions available which are certified now by multiple bodies globally in the financial world, which have recommended certain architecture, so to speak, and having an air-gapped vault area where you can keep your crown jewels and keep them off network so that you can analyze them, you can be proactive, you can be more ready to face and detect these attacks. And the detection objectives are much better now. So the idea is, as we evolve the security aspect from devices, which is got to be protected now from work from anywhere, which means not just antiviruses, but making sure there is zero trust, and also you validate everything as they're moving across the networks. Processes, very, very key. The way the human behavior is to be done, the development of applications, very, very much, a key part of how you're going to develop things, be it on-prem or off-prem. That is finally an operating environment. It is the behavior, it is the final objective with which you're developing should be very, very noble. And therefore, security should be considered first. The way we are adopting new technologies today across various age groups, we will be seeing this challenge becoming bigger, because definitely the threat actors are going to be smarter, and we have to be prepared for that last line of defense. There has to be a lifeboat on which you definitely can save the organization and your equity. As you move to cloud, yes, there will be multiple environments which will be available for organizations to leverage, be it on the compute side, be it on new interfaces on the applications. But ground level, you will have to prepare yourself to be able to recover and detect in time with actionable insights, with much faster algorithms to check any aberration that you see in the signatures or the metadata scanning, or having the statistics around it to be countering such threats. So in summary, I'll just say, Lalit, it is important for all of us, to prepare ourselves to meet this challenge. And I think government is doing a lot in this. As organizations, we all have to be very responsible custodians of the data that we are handling, how it is moving between networks, and now the whole universe is there. So much vulnerability will be there with more IoT devices coming in. We need to be prepared for all of that.
Just want to add something here. Thanks for this. There could be an application which is serving certain data connected with the database. The database is encrypted. However, the application have a vulnerability. And at that point of time, the vulnerability of application could be leveraged and data could be exfiltrated out from the database, which remains encrypted. But however, since application have permission to decrypt the information, so at that point of time, it's really important that we do have the right backup strategy. But before we have a backup strategy, I think one major aspect that we all should focus on is data classification. Which data should be protected by which control? We have last few minutes, so I just want to go around the table and understand from everyone. From an accessibility perspective, since the network boundary is dissolving, now it typically goes in the direction of zero trust, and essentially what we are saying is that network location is not to be trusted. There has to be other mechanism like identity. So just want to go around, probably you want to take this lead to your view on zero trust, and then we'll move around like quickly, 30 seconds, 45 seconds.
So zero trust, essentially, we believe, and our philosophy is that validate everything, making sure that as data is getting encrypted, moving at rest or in flight, between all the operating environments that you are operating, it should be checked much more continuous basis, just like we have continuous data protection, which is helping most of the largest organizations do continuous monitoring of the data between primary DR sites, and that is giving high availability, which is required. And similarly, for networks to also operate and data to flow through them, we need the right amount of validation to happen. I do understand that many of the infrastructure elements need to get into that maturity model, but it's a journey. And from the aspect of security, as we will adopt new devices and with more the edge becoming more stronger, or even from that perspective, a lot of distributed data centers will also be playing a part. Getting the element around validation is key. And therefore, what we definitely recommend is organizations and custodians of data, as they would be in various agencies or government bodies, they have to adopt this culture, because this is the one step towards getting those kind of outcomes.
Thank you. Moving on to Rohit, what's your take on zero trust? How do you want to take it with the organization? How do you want to implement it, or have you seen such implementation?
When we recommended zero trust implementation and when cloud came in picture, the achievability and actually the importance even rises more if you are going via a cloud deployment and then want identity to be the new perimeter, because otherwise there is no perimeter. Work from anywhere has practically dissolved all the perimeters. So if you still stick to the UTM approach or a firewall and a VPN and a IP-based filtering approach, it's gonna be a problem and it's not effective uses. Wherein when the zero trust and making identity as the perimeter plus identity while you're doing it, the second factor is more important, that you're dealing with humans. The human psychology and technological control put together can create a very good set of background in case of a zero trust environment, and which can be used by a lot of organizations. I have done a few implementation of those kind, even where the zero trust has been extended to the cloud, and frankly speaking, it is much more comfortable, even alternative to a regular VPN kind of a setup. So that's my view on that.
Not one solution. Identity need to be combined. Thanks. With this, we'll move to Avinash. Avinash, your thought on this?
Yeah, so this is actually a very ripe topic, and so much that one can look at. But thanks for the views shared so far on this. I would say, firstly we should look at the top 3 trends in my view, right? Number one is, today, if you look at the threat landscape of an enterprise, is it really the enterprise? Is it the cloud that they are accessing, or is it the entire ecosystem? We know that it's everything. This year we have seen, it's been eye-opening in terms of the kind of risk and threats that are coming in from your extended ecosystem and your supply chain side also. The second is, the notion of defining boundaries, knowing who your user is, knowing which system, who is coming, define specific paths for your traffic and your connections. It's not going to be there. It's all going to come in and connect it as everybody's going to come in and connect as feasible for them. The third is the nuance of privileges of who do what. Will need to be much more dynamic in terms of an assessment around that. It cannot be a static rule-based approach. So if we just take some of these trends, that in terms of what are you really looking at protecting, what is the environment you need to protect, and all of that, I think zero trust is becoming absolutely something which is aspect that can support all of this, because necessarily what you are trying to do is establish a mechanism whereby it is going through a certain layer whereby controls the visibility that is needed, or any remediation action also that is there. So literally, it's a translation of the earlier thinking of defense in depth is how I would protect myself, and I would keep all my crown jewels behind 3 layers of walls and perimeters and all of that, to zero trust kind of transforming itself into the same kind of a layered thinking. However, in an open world where the landscape that you need to protect is very different, and therefore it is very tightly tied to rights, users assessing that, making it a far more dynamic process. So I'm very excited about the future of how this would take us on the journey forward of what we're already seeing as a digital landscape for security.
Thanks, Avinash. With this, we'll quickly go to Kunal and quickly wrap it up. We are running out of time. Kunal, your concluding remarks?
Sure. So I think, as the other panelists are saying, I believe that zero trust is the is the way one will have to go to, and simply because organizations are becoming boundaryless to their customers, boundaryless towards their service providers, boundaryless towards their partners. There is a, I do a lot of work in financial services sector, and making customers do the entire transaction from start to end is the way in which the entire sector is moving. So that, because that becomes much more efficient. And when you're looking at an environment like that, there is no boundary, and therefore the concepts of zero trust will have to be looked at. I think the key points there would be, and if I look at from two directions, one is from the current setup which many organizations have. One has to move from the network or the setup which is very flat. There is a moat outside and there is a flat structure inside. While a lot of things have happened, that's still the, you could say a large part of setup is like that. From there, moving into zones, separate environment from one side. And other side, I think what a lot of panelists did say about looking at identities. And I would say identity not just about the human, identity of the device also. And look, because both the elements are very, very crucial. Looking at both, and then the secret sauce there in my mind is being able to understand what authorization a particular identity, whether it's a combination of the individual as well as the machine, which is going to be accessing, and how you will deal with the access there, that has to be looked at. So from both the dimensions, one has to go. Net, I think over a period of next few years, I think everybody will have to move towards zero trust, because cloud is just a matter of time where it becomes really the only thing available, and the organization is going to become more and more open. I'll hand it over back to you. We are running short of time, so over to you.
Thank you, Kunal. Yeah, thank you, Kunal. You said very important thing is over a period of time, there are going to be a two-factor. Well, I think there are 2-3 things, key takeaway: measure everything. And your identity is not only your network. There has to be additional identities, 2 factors. Authentication is just a simple thing, but over a period of time, a lot more things will add to it. Multiple attributes will add to it. And understand what is normal behavior in your environment so that you could catch anomalies. For this, I would like to conclude this panel discussion and like to thank Kunal, Rohit, Ripu, and Avinash. Thank you for joining today. Thanks for your time. And also like to thank from CII. Now we'll welcome Colonel Suhail Zaidi, who heads the Center of Digital, who heads the CII and leads digital transformation there.
Thank you, Lalit, and thank you all the panelists for highlighting the security aspects of cloud. And I'm sure all of us have learned quite a bit from the interaction which you had. Very helpful and very learning experience. I can see all the attendees here enjoying it, and we are getting input separately also that it has been a very good learning experience for all of us. So I would just say that this interaction, the 3.5 hours today, which happened since 10:30 in the morning, has been very, very interesting, because we started the day with getting inputs from various people across the system. For example, we had Mr. Narendranath giving the government's perspective. We had Vaishali Bhagat talking about the lawyer's perspective for in the field of cybersecurity. Then we also had Mr. Sandeep Karnik, who is from the police, from the law enforcement agency's perspective. And also we had Professor Wool from Israel, from Tel Aviv University, giving the international aspects of it. So the stage was set up very brilliantly, and the context was set up in a way wherein we could lead forward from there on. And then the interactions were very interesting in the sense that we started from the networking aspects of it, going to the unified threat management, and the last session was on the cloud. And I would not take more time because everybody has attended it and knows what came out. But one thing I would like to highlight here, that something was common in all the 3 sessions, and which was that technology is there to support everything. However, the common factor across each of the 3 sessions that we talked of was the human aspect. Humans are the most important and the common factor who need to be educated so that the security aspects are taken into account and we are able to handle it correctly. one of the panelists had earlier also brought out that it is very difficult for a single organization to be secure from the various aspects of security hazards which are coming from all the centers of breach or whatever we may call it. There are a large number of people who are against those organizations, and therefore it is the combined effort of all of us that we have to work towards so that we ensure that entire ecosystem of ours remains safe. And the zero trust architecture, as has been brought out, in fact, in all of the sessions, is the key to it, and we all should work towards it and join hand in taking this ahead. And I thank once again all the panelists who have been here for giving us the time and the very important and relevant inputs. Thank you so much. We look forward to interacting with you and learning with you in future as well. Thank you so much. With that, we close this session. So nice of you all.
Thank you. Hello.